As expected, Karl did not choose to wait. Instead, he ordered the early deployment of his troops. Zhang Wei violently slammed the table and screamed, "Damn it! It took Han Xiao so much effort to obtain the critical intelligence, but now this lot are going to leave us in the lurch." Such a scenario had been predicted by Han Xiao, and therefore, he looked rather calm. The rest were puzzled when they saw Han Xiao being so composed. Through the communication set, he ordered Lin Yao and Lambert, "You guys remain under cover. Always keep your safety at the front of your mind. We are going to retreat soon." "Copy that." There was an air of uneasiness around Zhang Wei and Li Ya. The truck was parked not far away from the Dark Crow Valley base. And once the base entered the battle mode, more enemy troopers would be deployed. The tracks of the truck would definitely be discovered quickly. There was no time to waste. "Li Yalin, you are in charge of driving the truck." Li Yalin was a pugilist, and she would not be able to launch attacks while they were driving anyway. Therefore, she did not disagree with Han Xiao's decision. Han Xiao and Zhang Wei stayed in the container, where they were able to carry out their strikes at the enemy. Li Yalin stepped hard on the accelerator, making no effort to cover their tracks. The engine of the truck blared, and the tires started to spray the mud and soil from the ground. The truck moved forward loudly. In a while, the sounds of approaching vehicles could be heard. The retreating party could feel the heavy beating of their hearts. Through the window, Han Xiao could see a large group of armored jeeps chasing behind their truck. The headlights of these jeeps could be seen flashing around the truck. There were more than 10 jeeps around, and each had a heavy machine gun attached. "We have been discovered." Zhang Wei's heart sank. Han Xiao was not affected by the heavy rocking of the moving truck. He started preparing the weapons to be used for the impending battle. "Drive fast, Yalin," Zhang Wei yelled. "I know," Li Yalin replied, biting her lips. She was trying to change gear to speed up even more. The full power of the truck's engine was unleashed, and it growled like an enraged beast. The anti-slip tires left deep marks in the moist ground. The uneven, hilly terrain and winding paths caused the truck's body to spring away from its tires as a result of the shock absorbance effect created by the vehicle's suspension. Even with the suspension working well, the truck rocked violently. Han Xiao peeked out of the window in the container and saw the enemy's jeeps closing in. "Can't you go faster?" Zhang Wei shouted. "This is a truck, not a sports car." Li Yalin was evidently irritated by Zhang Wei's comments. "The 4 buttons beside the gear lever can be used to activate the nitro boost," Han Xiao said. "You added nitro boost to the truck." Li Yalin was shocked yet excited to try it out. "Do not activate the boost now. We are still traveling through dense vegetation, and you may destroy the truck with it. Use this to pick up more speed once we reach the plains." Da-da-da-da. The enemy troopers from the jeeps started firing their machine guns. Thick smoke emerged from the guns' barrels. Countless enemy bullets were sprayed at them. However, the shots fired from further away were largely inaccurate. The firing encompassed a huge radius, and trees along the way were getting destroyed. Some bullets also managed to scrape the surface of the container, and sparks were created from friction. Li Yalin glanced at the rear mirror, and the next moment, the rear mirror was destroyed by a bullet. She cursed in silence. The heavy truck was difficult to control. It rocked violently as she tried to evade the oncoming trees that were obstructing the path. She could feel the pain in her, but due to all the incessant vibrations of the vehicle, the contents of the truck were flying all around, and Han Xiao had to use locks to fasten the weapons and machinery in place. The 2 prisoners were sitting at the corner of the container, trembling profusely. The sun was setting, and it looked as if the skies had been stained red with blood. Dozens of armored jeeps were engaged in the intense pursuit of the fleeing truck. The enemy troopers were fast approaching, and bullets were fired everywhere. Gunshots could be heard all over the forest. The blares of the engines sounded like the roars of a wild dragon. The wanderers who were at Crow Forest Town could hear the sounds of battle and started to search for the source of the faint sounds. Closer and closer, closer and closer. Suddenly, a truck emerged from the forest and entered Crow Forest Town like an uncontrollable rhinoceros. It crashed into a building, which instantly crumbled under the huge impact. The shape of the crash barrier at the head of the truck became warped. The truck sped past the streets. The wanderers on the streets were shocked and quickly searched for shelters to hide. Only after confirming that the truck had driven past did they come out of hiding. Many of them were confused and astonished. Before they could even calm down, the armored jeeps entered the town, driving recklessly. Many buildings were destroyed, and it was a complete mess. It was raining bullets, and many wanderers were shot by stray bullets. Screams of pain could be heard all around, and the ground was drenched with blood. The final rays of light from the sun disappeared, and night fell. The truck was finally at the edge of the forest, and the obstacle-free plains appeared before it. The headlights from the armored jeeps illuminated the darkness like a light dragon. There was no obstacle blocking the way on the plains, so it was easier for the armored jeeps to close the gap. Nearer and near they came. 600, 500, 400 meters. Zhang Wei, change into your armor. Zhang Wei felt a surge of adrenaline. Even before the command, he had prepared for the moment of his suit up. Upon activating the armor, he noticed an immediate difference. The internal skeletal system provided power for all movements, and therefore, there was no need for his own strength to be used. His vision was also enhanced with the analysis interface. Chains of battle data flashed on the display. There was even an enhanced scope that offered greater shot accuracy. Zhang Wei widened his eyes in disbelief. It is so powerful. Han Xiao loaded the high-explosive rounds into his sniper rifle and replied confidently, "This is only a simple modification. It was right to have spent the $36,000 on the suit." Ding ding dang dang. The clanging of the bullets that were crashing against armor became denser. "Retaliate now." Han Xiao growled, and following that, Zhang Wei kicked open the door of the container. He had a clear vision of what was in front of him. The head armor covered the fury in his eyes. He lifted the triple-barrel machine gun and started firing. 2222. The high-frequency gunshots created thunderous blasts. Thick ember emerged from the wild firing formed around the gun's barrel. Shells were spat out of the gun and fell to the ground. The large, long bullets coupled with traces of ember were directed at the armored jeeps. Boom! The bulletproof windows of 2 jeeps were shattered, and the passengers of the jeep were crushed. Zhang Wei held 2 chains of bullets tightly. The chains extended all the way behind his back and led to a box. The box contained the ammunition that Han Xiao prepared. Zhang Wei had sufficient ammunition to spray to his heart's content. The dozens of armored jeeps dispersed from their formation to evade the shots from Zhang Xiao. The enemy troopers fired back using the machine guns mounted on the jeeps. Zhang Wei was standing right at the opening of the container wearing his armor. The exterior of the suit was made up of the platinum alloy. Zhang Wei mounted the hexagonal shield before his body to shield himself from the bullets. Most of the bullets were blocked by the thick armor. Han Xiao raised the sniper rifle and started firing the high-explosive rounds. The rounds set the jeeps aflame. The enemy drivers started panicking, and once the flames reached the jeeps' engines, they were forced to stop. However, more jeeps were approaching, and bullet holes could be seen on the external armor of the truck. The distance was sufficient. Han Xiao put aside his sniper rifle and grabbed the mechanical dragonfly explosives from the box. He threw them forward as if they were free of charge. The mechanical dragonflies glided close to the ground, and they were detonated once they reached the jeeps. Boom! The armored jeeps were overturned by the explosions, and the momentum from the blast resulted in the jeeps tumbling in midair before landing. Once the flames reached the fuel tanks of the jeeps, it resulted in a second explosion that caused more deaths. The never-ending death toll started flashing on the tablet's interface. Every delayed explosion caused by the mechanical dragonfly could kill 4 to 8 enemy troopers in the jeep. In addition to the kills, EXP was also awarded for the destruction of the vehicle. Therefore, every jeep destroyed generated 5,000 to 7,000 EXP for Han Xiao. The rewards motivated Han Xiao greatly, and he strove to cause greater damage with the explosives. Direct conflict completed. You gained 35,000 EXP. Ah! Hysterical screams were heard. Han Xiao turned back his head only to realize that the 2 enemy troopers, who were held captive, had been killed by the flying bullets. Instantly Han Xiao's heart sank. The prisoners are dead. The firepower coming from the jeep started to lessen. The enemy troopers were afraid of the attacking abilities of the truck. A single truck had managed to destroy 20 armored jeeps. It was definitely a scary fact for the enemies. I can see the military forces of Hesla. Li Yilin screamed in excitement. Han Xiao looked ahead and saw the army of vehicles operated by the Hesla military. Commander, there seem to be skirmishes ahead of us. Carl looked at the video feed on the operation vehicle and was thoroughly shocked. More than 20 armored jeeps were chasing after the bullet hole-riddled heavy-duty truck. He then saw the trail of overturned jeeps that had been set ablaze. Carl was suspicious of the situation. These agents from Division 13 really had a substantial and fierce firepower. There were not many operation teams that had such strong fighting abilities that could rival with those of modern militaries. A smaller team enabled greater flexibility in operations. Usually, such operation teams were considered the best of their kind. He suppressed his initial shock. Following that, he squinted and started looking back and forth. Winna and Yi Fan were also astonished by the sight before their eyes. A single truck had managed to survive the attack of an army of armored jeeps. Also, it had managed to wipe out half of the total enemy count. It's surprising that the truck can still move after withstanding 1,000 shots. Even though the truck was almost wrecked, it could still travel freely like a wild dog on steroids. The truck had undergone some sort of modification. A grenade exploded on the armor of the truck, yet the explosion only caused minor change, barely denting the armor. In the same situation, a normal vehicle would have been blasted into multiple pieces. What sort of metal was it made of? Too strong. Even the agents for Division 13 were confused. Since when did Zhang Wei's team possess such powerful fighting capabilities? Could a mechanic really elevate the firepower of a team so much? The armored jeeps started to flee from the scene by turning in the opposite direction. Carl's eyes lit up, and he ordered, "Provide fire support and blast everything in the vicinity." Carl's assistant understood the hidden agenda behind Carl's order. He was shocked but still carried out the order. The area of attack was locked in. The team of vehicles equipped with missile launchers moved forward, and in an instant, the rockets were launched. The truck fell inside the radius of the missile strike. The agents from Division 13 were sharp-eyed and figured out what Carl was trying to do. They were enraged and astonished. The assistant officer explained, "Damn it, we miscalculated the radius of the attack." Such words were only sufficient to fool little kids. The agents from Division 13 were not convinced, and the enraged Qi Bai Jiao shouted, "Carl, what do you think you are doing?" Carl did not reply. His face was expressionless, and his eyes were cold as ice. "Too bad. You guys do not belong to Hesla." Li Yilin could clearly see the flaming exhaust of the rockets, which also signified the impending destruction their team was going to face. She screamed, "They want to send us up to heaven too. Hesla's commanders did it on purpose." Zhang Wei was furious. Even though tension was bound to occur during joint operations involving different countries, nobody expected the commanding officer from Hesla to make such a brutal move. Also, he could shirk off the responsibility by conveniently claiming that it was an accident. Only radicals would resort to such despicable measures, the killing of their allies and the neglecting of consequences. The Germinal Organization was a common enemy of the Six Nations. All the parties agreed on counterterrorism efforts. However, the different parties involved were not allies, and some even had conflicts with one another. The higher-ups of the nations were pretentious and hypocritical. They were also willing to sacrifice those beneath them to attain their goals. Han Xiao focused and shouted, "Nitro boost!" Li Yilin immediately pressed the button. Blue flames emerged from the exhaust of the truck. The acceleration of the truck was exponentially increased, charging forward like a wild rhinoceros. Li Yilin was pressed hard onto her seat by the surging momentum. The rockets began to descend quickly. 300, 200, 150 meters. Boom! Finally, the blast arrived and created a wave of heat that resulted in a mushroom cloud of dust. The flaming smoke rose on the plains. At that instant, everyone lost their senses. The sound of the blast exceeded the audible range of the human ear. It was as if the whole world had fallen silent. All that was left was a rising glow, which illuminated the night sky. Everything within the radius of the strike regardless of vehicles or humans, had been demolished. After 3 seconds, an incessant ringing became audible. Rage and fury were written on the faces of the agents from Division 13. Grief could be observed from the killer eyes of Di Su Su. A green flame was burning silently in her heart. Whoosh! The wind started howling. The heavy-duty truck emerged out of the thick dark smoke. Only a small section of the container had been blown apart. Some of the machinery and accessories had been reduced to scrap metal. They are still alive. The agents from Division 13 were surprised. Li Yilin was not yet out of her state of shock. It had really just been a matter of a few meters. They were really lucky to have escaped the radius of the strike in time. If not for the nitro boost, all of them would have vanished into thin air. Han Xiao coughed out the blood from his throat. He'd suffered from injuries due to the shockwave of the blast. Almost 200 HP had been lost due to the blast. The second blast had sent him crashing into the hard wall of the container, costing him another 50 HP. Han Xiao was still feeling giddy from the aftershock of the blast. After the nitro boost, the engine was overheating, but it still managed to move forward till it reached the Hesla soldiers. After seeing countless bullet holes on the container, the soldiers of Hesla could feel the chills up their spines. What a tough battle they'd had. What a pity. They managed to survive. Carl frowned in disappointment. After Han Xiao alighted from the truck, the agents from Division 13 started to crowd before him. Qi Baijia, who broke out into cold sweat, heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that Han Xiao was alive and well. Carl walked toward the agents. Instantly, the agents from Division 13 glowered furiously at him. Zhang Wei, clad in his armor, gritted his teeth and moved toward Carl. The soldiers at the side immediately raised their weapon and pointed at the agents. The assistant officer bellowed, "What do you want? Back off. I want an explanation." Zhang Wei yelled. "Explanation? How childish." Carl ignored Zhang Wei and glanced at Han Xiao. He asked flippantly, "Where are the captured enemies?" "Dead." Carl's order to strike ahead of the stipulated time had caused immense danger for them. The 2 captured enemies had also been killed. More importantly, Carl had tried to kill them. It was obvious that he had done these things on purpose. Han Xiao shut his eyes to conceal the ice-cold chill in them. "No more evidence, I suppose?" Carl frowned with a look of discontent. His poor attitude angered the agents from Division 13 even more. However, they were rational enough to keep their cool as they were, ultimately, in a foreign land surrounded by soldiers from Hesla. Qi Baijia could not contain his anger and lashed out, prepared to be questioned by Division 13. Carl couldn't care less. Division 13 had no jurisdiction over him. Moreover, what happened just was an accident. There was no evidence to justify that he had done it on purpose. At most, he would be reprimanded by the foreign diplomats. He would not have to face any real punishment. If he managed to destroy the Dark Crow Valley base, it would truly be a great achievement. With the help of his backers, he was highly likely to be promoted to the leading figure for the radicals in the government. No matter how Division 13 complained about him, the higher-ups in Hesla would be there to fend off these complaints. Carl thought to himself, after which he pointed at Han Xiao and said, "Take him to the medic. Let them check his injuries." Han Xiao had no expression on his face. He followed the medic to the logistics vehicle. All his injuries were due to the shock on his soft body. With his endurance, he would recover quickly with a sufficient amount of rest. Therefore, he dismissed the medic. The logistics vehicle started its engine. Hesla's troops continued their advance. Han Xiao shook his head, closed his eyes, and then proceeded to lie on his bed. He had not slept since yesterday. Now was the right time for him to catch up on his sleep. The sounds of gunshots could be heard. Han Xiao was a light sleeper, and he opened his eyes. He alighted from the vehicle and realized it was midnight, around 3 to 4 a.m. At this point of time, Hesla's troops had arrived at the border of the high-alert sectors of the Dark Crow Valley base. The 6 high-alert sectors comprised not only of sentry guards and patrolling troopers, there were also large defense mechanisms put in place like ramparts and guardhouses that were fortified with enemy troops. In the event of war, Hesla's army would have to go past the 6 high-alert sectors before they closed in on the actual base itself. Han Xiao, who was now with the logistics division, was far from the battlefront. Han Xiao asked the two soldiers guarding by his side, "What's the situation of the battlefront?" One of the soldiers replied, "Everything is proceeding smoothly. Our troops have successfully reached the 4th sector." Han Xiao nodded, and just when he was about to proceed out, the two soldiers blocked his path. "The colonel wants you to rest and recover from your injuries here." Upon hearing that, Han Xiao realized that he had been intentionally imprisoned here by the colonel. Han Xiao frowned and asked, "Where are my friends? Your officer also tasked us to look after you and ensure that you have sufficient rest." Han Xiao understood the intentions of Qi Baijia. He did not want Han Xiao to risk his life anymore. Ultimately, Han Xiao had almost been killed by the flaming missiles. Qi Baijia wanted to keep Han Xiao away from the battlefront. Such a move is better for my plan, Han Xiao thought. Han Xiao turned his head and saw the truck being towed away. The escape mission had almost destroyed the entire truck. Without a full repair, the truck would surely be not usable. Han Xiao's eyes suddenly lit up before he proceeded toward the heavy-duty truck. The two soldiers guarding him allowed him to do so. Han Xiao was free to go anywhere as long as he stayed away from the battlefront in the logistics zone. He entered the container and discovered that all the important equipment was still around. Only the bodies of the two captured soldiers had been disposed of. Han Xiao took out the communication set from the box and adjusted it to Lin Yao's frequency. "Lin Yao, are you still alive?" "Of course I am. But don't jinx it." Lin Yao's unfriendly voice blared out from the earpiece. "What's the situation now?" "We are preparing for the retreat." Apparently, according to the higher-ups in the base, the troops stationed around the base were all deployed to fight Hesla's army. I have yet to discover their path of retreat. Seems like I'll have to follow the order to locate the exact route. Oh, I also managed to find out the false information that Yifan collected. The defense mechanism and deployment between the 3rd and 6th sectors were true. However, the 1st and 2nd sectors were different. If Hesla's troops attack according to the information Yifan provided, they are bound to suffer heavy losses. Have you told them yet? Nope, you are the first guy that contacted me. That's good. Don't tell that to Hesla's people. Lin Yao was confused and asked, "Why so?" Han Xiao told him the series of events that had happened previously. Upon hearing the incident of the misfire of the missiles, Lin Yao's blood started boiling with rage. That is just too much. Carl revealed his intention to wipe out his allies, so it was no longer logical for Division 13 to continue assisting him in the operation and minimize his losses. The intelligence that Han Xiao provided was all aimed at eliminating Pan Kuang and Ji Jie, who were high-value members of the Germinal organization. Only the successful elimination of them would ensure the mission's success. Carl treated them like they were merely tools. Now it was time for Han Xiao to reciprocate. They wanted his intelligence reports, and he wanted their troops. Both parties were merely using each other to their advantage. As long as Hesla's army accomplished the mission using his intelligence, he could not have cared less about the number of troops they lost. What Han Xiao had not expected was Carl's intention to kill them. It is time for a change of plan. Han Xiao's eyes sparkled brightly. Morning was always the best time of the day. Likewise, morning was also the best time to fight a battle. The previous night, the Hesla troops had managed to clear the 4th high alert sector. Carl had ordered his troops to rest for an hour before continuing their advancement at first light. They wanted to reach the base in one final attack. As the sun rose, the Hesla troops were fighting the enemies at the 3rd high alert sector. Boom, boom, boom. The endless blasts were thunderous, and they enshrouded the battleground in smoke. The entire forest was wrecked by the hail of bullets and artillery strikes, the used shells of which were littered everywhere. The soldiers from Hesla, coupled with the armored vehicles, managed to take down the defense mechanisms in place. One after another, fortresses, sentry posts, and trenches were destroyed. The information Yifan had obtained was of great use. The enemy's defense mechanisms were practically useless against the attacks. The troops managed to secure their objectives with minimal losses. The soldiers were elated because their victories had never been so comfortable before. Continue to advance. Let's take down the 2 remaining high alert sectors in one shot. Carl was overwhelmed with excitement. Once the confident troops entered the 2nd high alert sector, the favorable situation started to turn around. Not long after stepping foot into the second high-alert sector, the Hesla troops faced their first enemy ambush. 2 armored vehicles and dozens of soldiers were wiped out by well-hidden mines. And that was in fact just an appetizer. The Hesla soldiers were soon completely devastated. The death toll was rising steadily, and there were traps and ambushes everywhere. Yi Fan's intelligence was practically useless at this stage. Following the false information provided led to even greater losses. The various platoons were at a complete loss. The intelligence about the first 4 high-alert selectors had allowed Hesla's military to successfully penetrate deep and eventually enter the ambush zone that Jie had marked out. The casualties were increasing exponentially. Carl experienced a mix of shock and fury. The expression on Winna's face changed. Indeed, the information they had obtained was only bait. Han Zhao's predictions were right. They were indeed responsible for the huge losses. Yi Fan shook his head and said, "The enemies are too cunning and ruthless. They were willing to sacrifice the lives of their own comrades to lure us in. It was almost impossible to see through their plot. Perhaps that's the advantage of being on the defensive side. The Germinal organization is not afraid to go all out. However, such a measure is not feasible for our side." Carl's moves were too radical. He should have listened to Han Xiao and been less brash with his deployments. He looked at his remorseful teammates and sighed. At this point, Carl saw his soldiers falling one after another. He had an uncomfortable expression. What was supposed to be a smooth sailing situation had flipped around. The easy win had reversed, becoming a complete disaster. Even if they managed to prevail in the battle, it was going to be a costly victory. The Hesla troops, who were facing head-on defeats, were suffering heavy losses, and their advancement proceeded at a snail's pace. Suddenly, a grim-looking man who held a long machete in his hand emerged from the enemy side. He was surrounded by cold and transparent waves of energy that bore similarity to flames. The air beside him distorted as he dashed toward Hesla's army. The soldiers immediately started firing their rifles, but the man span as he ran and speedily slashed his machete. The approaching bullets were disintegrated by the slashes and fell to the ground. Pugilist. While the soldiers were still in shock, the man barged into the crowd. Within seconds, the combo of powerful slashes from the shiny machete diced numerous Hesla soldiers into many bits. Blood sprayed everywhere, and broken limbs, heads, and torsos could be seen all over the ground. The man stood with conviction amid the sea of red. Pan Kuang. The agents were all astonished. Pan Kuang was the man in charge of the Dark Crow Valley base, and the executive officer of the Germinal organization. In addition, he had managed to kill many powerful individuals, and had a glorious battle record on the Dark Net. Based on his battle record on the Dark Net, Pan Kuang was highly adept with his machete. His fighting style originated from that of Ruilan, and he was becoming known as the soul of the blade. The light reflected by his shiny blade was usually the last thing his slain enemies saw. The armored vehicle adjusted its position. Larger bullets were fired out from the readjusted barrel at Pan Kuang. Pan Kuang started leaping with unbelievably fast movements, and dodged the incoming shots by ducking behind the trees. It was impossible for ordinary Solidar to accurately trace the position of Pan Kuang. More often than not, in the blink of an eye, Pan Kuang would disappear without any trace, and the fired shots would all miss. Pan Kuang was able to move around the battleground with ease, and without any substantial obstruction. Like a life-claiming reaper, Pan Kuang slew one soldier after another. He even managed to slash open a couple of heavily armored trucks, and kill the soldiers inside the vehicles. As long as there were shelters that offered protection against the bullets, a superhuman could unleash his extensive power and cause immense damage. The energy he possessed protected his body, and ordinary gunpowder and bullets were unable to cause any significant harm. A D-class superhuman could battle a platoon on their own and escape with ease after the fight. A C-class superhuman had colossal strength and an iron body that could withstand the attacks of guns and cannons. They could cause substantial damage on all terrains and could tear down a building with their bare hands easily. A C-class superhuman was of the lowest level in the galaxy. It also had the title of Basic Cosmic Warrior. Different planets in the galaxy had different gravitational fields and atmospheric conditions. A C-class superhuman would be able to set foot on most planets. It was normal for certain species that lived in harsher galactic conditions to possess C-class superhuman bodies from birth. However, there were very few C-class superhumans on Aquamarine. The superhumans on this planet were low-ranked ones. Pan Kwang's superhuman class was E+, one level away from becoming D-class. He was able to easily defeat groups of Hesla soldiers in the complicated forested terrain. A superhuman possessed a powerful solo fighting capability, and they would often swipe in to kill the highest-ranking commander of the troops, or infiltrate the enemy to sabotage operations. Soldiers in the way were being killed by the advancing Pan Kwang. It was obvious that Pan Kwang was traveling in the direction of Carl. Carl had made it onto the radar of Pan Kwang's killer instincts, which made Carl feel very uneasy. He had no sense of security even when he was protected tightly by his troops. So he immediately commanded, "Launch the thermotracing rockets." An armored vehicle equipped with missile launchers arrived, and multiple rockets that were locked onto Pan Kwang were fired. Pan Kwang was circling the forest speedily, and the rockets crashed into the trees. The last rocket managed to go through the gaps between the tree trunks and headed for Pan Kwang. With a tight frown, Pan Kwang halted in his steps. He scooped up some soil and held the machete with both of his hands. There was an invisible wave of energy surrounding the blade. He slashed the machete at the rocket. The quick slash managed to hit the side of the rocket at the right time. The force from the strike changed the course of the rocket, and its path was altered. The rocket crashed into a large tree that was 20 meters away and burst into flames. Pan Kwang was slightly disorientated by the shockwave of the explosion. If Han Xiao were there, he would have seen that the damage was more than 20 health points. After realizing that even the rockets were useless against Pan Kwang, Carl looked at his agents. Carl's intention of deploying the agents to protect himself was clear. "Let's go," Winna yelled, and Hesla's agents moved forward together with her. The agents from Division 13 were observing from one side. The joint operation no longer made sense after what Carl had done. Therefore, they were not going to help. After finding out that the agents from Hesla had entered the battle, Pan Kwang immediately sheathed his machete and retreated. He did not want to be held up by the agents. Gunshots echoed through the forest as bullets were fired out of the agents' guns. The shiny blade slashed past. Light was reflected off the surface of the blade. A bullet fired at Pan Kwang was cut in half. Although Pan Kwang operated at a lower speed than the flying bullet, he had managed to anticipate the path of the bullet and position his machete at the perfect spot. His reflexes were rapid. Pan Kwang remained expressionless as he turned away and disappeared into the forest. In this attack, Pan Kwang had managed to kill hundreds of enemy soldiers and destroy a couple of armored vehicles. The morale of Hesla's soldiers was at its lowest. They had suffered heavy casualties, and the initial fatigue accumulated from the attacks on the previous 4 sectors was beginning to take its toll. The situation forced Carl to slow down the attack, even though he was unwilling to do so. Jia was observing the situation at the front line from his monitor. The second high-alert sector was down, and Hesla's troops were moving toward the final sector. Even if Hesla's army suffered great losses, they still had an upper hand over the armed security guards of the base. However, everything was under control. After Pan Kwang returned, Jia locked the doors leading to the base. Even if the enemy managed to take down the external base, they would be unable to locate the internal base. Furthermore, Jia was also preparing to give a big gift to the Hesla soldiers outside the internal base. "Assistant Director, when are we going to retreat?" "Now," Jia said. The staff of the inner base gathered at the doorstep of the third secret passageway. Lin Yao and Lambert were furthest away from the rest. When nobody was looking, they would inform each other of critical intelligence. Strangers would think that they were just making casual conversation. Boom. The final fortress was blasted into pieces by the cannon of a mini-tank. The remaining armed guards only had one choice: retreat into the base. All the defense lines crumbled, and Carl finally loosened up from the tension. The final two sectors had cost 70% more losses than expected. Carl's superiors would definitely be less impressed when they saw the battle report. The enemies are left with the final base, and they have nowhere to retreat to. Are we going to let the troops rest for a while? The assistant officer asked. Carl was sat in deep thought, and he suddenly remembered Han Zhao's intelligence report. It mentioned that there was an inner base, and also a secret escape passageway. Instantly, he felt that it was an opportunity for him to improve his battle record. He did not want to waste a single moment, so as to reduce the enemy's chance of escape. Therefore, he issued an order with conviction. Start the attack immediately. Remember to search thoroughly in the facility, especially the storerooms. There must be some hidden door somewhere that can lead us to the enemy's inner base. The order was confirmed, and the soldiers who had still not yet recovered from the shock of the previous battle regained their spirits and entered the base to wipe out the remaining enemies. The base was very small, and the fighting took place in the narrow alleys. Endless gunshots could be heard throughout the drawn-out battle. We found the storeroom, but no hidden doors can be seen. There are only solid concrete walls. We also tested our explosives on the walls. Maybe there is something wrong with the intelligence report. Carl frowned hard. He summoned his assistant and said, "Bring the agents from Division 13 here. Also get me Han Xiao. I want to ask them about the intelligence report they submitted." While the battle at the front lines was still ongoing, Han Xiao, who was at the logistics zone away from the battlefront, was observing the situation attentively. Han Xiao had seen many high-level battles that involved the destruction of entire planets in the game. Compared to those battles, the current one, a low-level battle fought on the ground, gave Han Xiao a greater adrenaline rush. The sound of gunshots and scent of gunpowder gave a better display of the brutality and the atmosphere of war compared to those battles Han Xiao had previously witnessed, which had only involved silent energy beams and plasma cannons. Han Xiao sat in the container of the truck, while the two sentry guards were still guarding the vehicle tightly. They were highly suspicious that Han Xiao was intending to escape. Lin Yao's voice could be heard from Han Zhao's earpiece. "Brother Xiao, we are going to retreat together with the core team of the enemy. I have planted the virus in their system, so we can now jam their communications anytime. Good job." Oh, Uncle Lambert made a new discovery. The internal structure of the base is very strong, and it is probably explosion-proof. Han Xiao frowned, and after piecing together the bits of information, he suddenly realized that the external base was disguised as the bait, or more accurately, a graveyard. There were probably heaps of explosives hidden, and once the invaders stepped into it, the explosives would be triggered to kill all of them. Also, the explosions would be strong enough to demolish the external base and bury everything in it, thereby making the internal base more discreet. What an ingenious plan. Han Xiao sighed. Even if he were to report the situation now, it would be too late. Also, Han Xiao did not have any intention of doing so. He had finally reached the final stage of his plan. Han Xiao rose up and began to pack his belongings. He transferred all the accessories and important mechanical components from the container into his bag. The bag was completely filled. Han Xiao then said to the two sentry guards, "Could you guys help me carry some of these items? They are pretty heavy." The two troops went up the truck unknowingly to help Han Xiao carry his bag. The moment they bent their bodies, Han Xiao took action. With two solid punches to the necks of the soldiers, both of them collapsed to the ground without making a sound. Han Xiao closed the door of the container, and he secretly changed into the trooper's attire and removed the mask he was wearing. After which, he activated the mask and used it to change his appearance. He carried the bag and walked out confidently. He was able to blend into the logistics team without anyone noticing. Carl's assistant soon rushed back. Everyone from Division 13, except for Han Xiao, was present, he said. Carl was shocked. He disappeared. The two sentry guards that were supposed to look after him were found unconscious. I asked the logistics team, and nobody saw Han Xiao around. Carl wanted to continue the conversation, but there was a thunderous boom in the air, which made him jump up on reflex. He immediately started scouting for the source of the sound. The mountain was moving, and it was as if an earthquake had struck. Everyone was terrified. The Dark Crow Valley base had detonated. The entire base crumbled, and the main entrance was completed, sealed by the falling rocks. Hundreds of elite soldiers were buried. The turn of events obviously infuriated Carl. The troops had fallen into the enemy's trap just as victory was in sight. Countless lives were claimed, and the base was also destroyed. This greatly depreciated the value of the victory. Carl knew that, as the commander of the forces, he would face a lot of backlash. Carl had a gloomy look, and he thought of Han Zhao's advice. If he had heeded the advice, he could have prevented the heavy losses. But even if he had the opportunity to choose again, Carl felt that he would still make the same choice. He was completely frustrated, and vented that frustration on the wall of the commander's vehicle. The army had suffered heavy losses, and Carl could feel the pain in his heart. He then gave several orders to raise the morale of the dejected troops. After the agents from Division 13 arrived, Carl said with a gloomy face, "Your teammate disappeared. What is going on exactly?" Han Xiao vanished again. One could clearly see the change in expression on the agents' faces. Why the word again? Qi Baijia felt a blank in his mind. God damn it, Han Xiao always did such things. Zhang Wei and Li Yilin were very calm. It was as if they had gotten used to it. It was really the norm for Han Xiao to carry out tasks at his own will, without seeking any approval. One just had to get used to it. He was probably on his way to create some new trouble. If Han Xiao did not obtain the critical intelligence, you would have foolishly thought that you have successfully destroyed the base, when in actual fact, you have only managed to destroy the outer region. You would not even be aware that the enemies have escaped. Carl pondered. And indeed, he would have thought that his operation was a complete success. And if the Dark Crow Valley base managed to reinstate itself in the future, he would the first to be held responsible. What other information can you guys offer? Carl asked anxiously. Zhang Wei, who was trying hard to suppress his detest for Carl, bellowed. Two of our companions retreated together with the enemy. Once they confirm the enemy's path of retreat, they will send it to us. Carl's eyes lit up and said immediately, "Inform me as soon as you receive any news." He had not expected that Han Xiao would accomplish so much in his operation. His troops had suffered way too many losses in the previous battle, so he needed to atone for his mistakes by successfully eliminating the core of the enemy's retreating force. There was a region away from everyone's attention at the outskirts 10 kilometers away from the Dark Crow Valley base. Pan Kuang, Ji Jia, and over 200 corps members were exiting the secret passageway via their vehicles. The vehicles carried huge amounts of logistical items, and also contained precious information about the base. I suppose Hesla think that they have won the battle? Ji Jia let out uncontrollable laughter. Pan Kuang looked at him and said, "Don't let your guard down." Ji Jia nodded, and ordered the teams to advance faster. They needed to travel for another 2 hours to reach a secret hangar that housed several Black Harrier helicopters and a small cargo plane. Lin Yao and Lambert received Zhang Wei's orders from their earpieces. They looked at each other and knew it was time for them to strike. Lin Yao took out a tablet and activated the dormant virus planted in the enemy communication network. Sheila. Everyone was shocked by the piercing shrieks in their earpieces. They immediately removed them from their ears. Ji Jia was disgruntled. Just as he was about to order the vehicle fleet to stop and inspect on the communication set, he heard a series of engine hums approaching from all directions. Prone. Pan Kuang's expression immediately changed. He pushed Ji Jia, who had yet to react, to the ground. After Pan Kuang completed these actions, there was a wave of gunshots. Bullets rained on the fleet from all directions. The exploding grenades overturned the vehicles of the fleet. Flames and glaring light could be seen. Lambert dragged Lin Yao off the vehicle. They rolled toward the vegetation at the side to avoid the direct attack. Ji Jia could not believe that his trap had been discovered by the invaders, who had leaked the information. Run! There was no time for any disappointment. Ji Jia was dragged toward the forest swiftly by Pan Kuang. Carl, who was commanding his troops from the forest, felt a great sense of excitement. His troops had encircled the core of the retreating enemy, and he knew it was a golden opportunity for him to turn things around. A distance away, Han Xiao, who had changed his appearance, was driving the jeep alone. He held a thermosensor in his hand and was searching the battle zone. He quickly discovered his targets, Pan Kuang and Ji Jie, who had managed to escape the heavy encirclements. Troops who managed to catch up with Pan Kuang were mercilessly destroyed by his powerful fighting abilities. Han Xiao was tailing both of them from 100 meters away with the help of his thermosensor. A jeep is approaching. Pan Kuang looked behind. He could barely see the jeep that was following them in the dense forest, and the faint sound of the jeep's engine could be heard. Pan Kuang wanted to destroy the jeep. However, every time his distance from the jeep shortened, Han Xiao would change course and increase the distance between them again. The jeep was just like an irritant. Pan Kuang thought Han Xiao was operating a reconnaissance jeep that reported their location back to the enemy. Also, they expected the entire army to be following them, and therefore, they were afraid to stop moving. Pan Kuang, who was dragging Ji Jie in his escape, could feel the quick depletion of his energy. We just need to reach the hangar. The helicopter will help us with the escape. Pan Kuang knew that was his only way to escape. Although Pan Kuang was a superhuman himself, his fear of being surrounded by a gargantuan enemy force prompted him to increase his speed. He failed to realize that Ji Jie was deeply fatigued. After chasing for about 20 minutes, both parties were far from the front line. The time is right. Han Xiao could feel a sense of determination. He changed his course and went in front of his targets with the help of a map he had stolen from the logistics department. The jeep traveled at a very high speed, and Han Xiao drove up a 10-meter high cliff that was 2 kilometers away, which his targets were sure to pass by. The engine stopped, and Han Xiao took out all his gear. He slotted his left arm into the modified lightweight mechanical arm and attached the box housing the magnetically controlled retractable armor to his waist. He stuck his Berserk Eagle into its case, and then buried 10 delayed explosion explosives in the shape of a circle with a radius of 5 meters. A thin thread was lined through the safety rings of the delayed explosion explosives, so a slight pull would activate them all. Han Xiao grabbed a sniper rifle he had sourced from the logistics team and lay prone on a rock. He had a clear view of the valley and aimed his rifle in the direction his targets were expected to arrive in. He held his breath and focused hard. Ji Jie was panting heavily. His face was all pale from the running. He was not a superhuman, so he had limited stamina. If it wasn't for Pan Kuang, he would have collapsed long ago. Pan Kuang shouted emotionlessly, "Don't stop. The enemy could approach at any moment. We need to reach the hangar as soon as possible." The two of them came out of the forest quickly. The mountains lay ahead of them. Ji Jie felt his legs wobble before he fell to the ground. Breathlessly he said, "I can't run anymore." Pan Kuang frowned. He was slightly irritated, but he knew he could not leave Ji Jie behind. Ji Jie's sister was in charge of the entire intelligence network of the Germinal organization. "Carry me on your back, it is." Ji Jie was halfway through his sentence when a gunshot rang in the air. Pan Kuang reacted quickly and ducked backwards. However, he was not the target of the shot. Ji Jie's head was thrust backwards as if a punch had been thrown at him. There was a bloody hole on his left cheek. The hole was so big that it allowed the bullet to tumble in Ji Jie's skull, crushing his left cheek. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Ji Jie's expression froze as he collapsed to the ground. He showed no signs of life anymore. Assassination 2 completed. 100% of energy expended. You gain 4000 EXP. Pan Kuang's pupils constricted. He drew out his machete and dashed toward the source of the shot. Pan Kuang was closing in. Han Xiao spammed the trigger of the rifle. Chains of bullets skipped out of the barrel and pierced through the air, heading in the direction of the target. It was as if Pan Kuang had the danger-sensing ability of a beast. He always changed his position before Han Xiao fired the shots. Han Xiao fired a total of 13 shots, and Pan Kuang dodged 9 of them. The remaining 4 bullets lost their momentum after hitting the blade. The bullets were reflected by Pan Kuang's protective energy, and their total damage was merely 80 HP. A high-class superhuman would have a stronger defensive capability. Ordinary weapons and ammunition were useless against Pan Kuang. The firepower of an ordinary weapon from a place indicated the general level of civilization of that place. With the opening up of higher versions and more maps, the upgrading of the ordinary weapons would follow. However, It was evident that such a day had yet come. The distance between Pan Kuang and Han Xiao was shrinking rapid, and Han Xiao could see the deathly chill in Pan Kuang's eyes. Damn it, he's quick. Han Xiao cursed softly, and threw his rifle to the side. He tugged the thread in his hands, and activated the delayed explosives, then pretended fleeing. Pan Kuang was much faster, and went up the cliff in a few steps. He stepped into the ambush circle, and sensed something was off. His face changed, and he leapt into the air. His shiny blade was spinning beneath his torso. It was as if he was riding a hurricane, pushing him up the skies. Boom! The 10 explosives detonated together, and Pan Kuang was engulfed by the flames. Your delayed explosion explosives dealt a damage of 34 HP to Pan Kuang. Damage protection is taken into account. Your delayed explosion explosives dealt a damage of 37 HP to Pan Kuang. Pan Kuang is slightly torched. 10 messages appeared on the interface, and after a quick glance, Han Xiao confirmed that the series of explosions had dealt more than 400 HP damage to Pan Kuang. Due to your level, you gain some information about the enemy. Name Pan Kuang. Level 38. Class: Agent LV10. Amateur Pugilist LV10. Stormblader LV10. Attributes: 65 STR. Dex. End. Int. Mice 8 Cha 7 Luck. HP. Energy. Energy rank. 687. Grade E+. Specialties: Amateur blade wielding technique. Plus 10 attack points when using blades or machetes. Soul of the windy blade. The blade is the extension of our limbs. Listen closely to the breath of the wind. Skills: Defensive blade of the wind LV.6. Wind gliding steps LV.4. Equipment: Wind slicing blade. Grade green. Damage: 44 to 47. Length: 0.87 meters. Weight: 10.2 pounds. Description: An alloy blade manufactured by a master blacksmith, very strong. Additional effects: windy breath, smooth texture, plus 3% attack speed. Strong edges, sharp blade, plus 3% additional damage to metallic objects. There was a huge difference in level. Also, much of the information was unknown. However, Han Xiao was not completely reliant on hard statistics. From the performance of Pan Kuang, it was evident that he had high attacking power and agility, and his weak side would be his limited health. It was certain that the explosion had taken away 20% of Pan Kuang's initial health. Furthermore, Pan Kuang had faced tough battles previously, and spent an hour on the run from his enemies. Therefore, he was not in his best condition for a fight. I have a higher probability of winning. Han Xiao looked at the experience that he had accumulated on the interface, and it was as high as 520,000 points. He channeled all the experience points into raising his levels. Like a rocket, Han Xiao rapidly gained 4 levels. His HP was raised to 985, almost exceeding 1,000. He had practiced the energy training technique 48 times, and his energy had managed to hit 390 points. He just needed a little more to gain 4 continuous level-ups, and raise his energy to 540 points, which exceeded the LV.5 benchmark of 400 points. That would allow for new increases in all his other attributes. His strength, endurance, agility, and intelligence were increased by approximately 10% each. The rest of the experience points were channeled into continuous gliding shots. Level 2. A slight increase in the effect of the ability. Whoosh! Pan Kuang emerged from the flames, and he was charred from head to toe. He looked battered, and his eyes were locked onto Han Xiao like an exasperated wolf. He growled and shifted his feet as if he was gliding. In the blink of an eye, he slashed his blade with fury in an attempt to disintegrate the scoundrel who had ambushed him. The light from the blade flashed, and Han Xiao retreated 3 steps. Han Xiao's speed shocked Pan Kuang. Han Xiao dodged the slashes from Pan Kuang, and took out his berserk eagles. With his increased attack speed, he fired the pistols. The bullets, which had ferrous cores, went straight toward Pan Kuang's chest. Pan Kuang moved his machete back and forth, and the bullets were slashed apart. Only one bullet managed to hit his chest, but Pan Kuang's immense energy lowered the bullet's momentum. The bullet was stuck between his muscles. Han Xiao realized that ordinary bullets were of little use. He immediately switched the magazine for high-explosive rounds. Pan Kuang made use of this moment to approach closer. "How dare you switch magazines right before my eyes? Are you tired of living?" Changing magazine in front of a pugilist was a sign of insufficient battle experience. Pan Kuang, with a sinister look on his face, slashed toward Han Zhao's throat. He tried to pierce through Han Zhao's neck, as if it just was a piece of meat on the skewer. Pan Kuang could tell that Han Xiao could not dodge his hack. Ding! The edge of the blade managed to touch Han Zhao's throat, but it was blocked by metallic scales. Pan Kuang's pupils constricted. When did this armor appear? Han Xiao felt a little suffocated. Although the magnetically controlled retractable armor could withstand the shock, there was still some leftover force that landed on his body. He raised the pistol and started firing continuously. Pan Kuang blocked the bullets with his blade again. This time, the high-explosive rounds detonated the moment the blade touched its tip, and the flames enshrouded Pan Kuang's body and burnt him. What the hell is this bullet? Pan Kuang's heart skipped a beat. He channeled his energy to shake off the flames, but to no avail. The orange flames could not be shaken off, and his skin burned harshly. He could only retract his energy to protect his body. That resulted in a huge amount of energy being expended. The high-explosive rounds were highly adhesive. Therefore, they were able to cause substantial continuous damage. Pan Kuang had a high defense, so his HP was falling at a very slow rate. However, using the high-explosive rounds was still more effective than normal rounds. At least, the former was causing a decrease in Pan Kuang's HP. The berserk eagles were spitting out rounds from slanted positions. When there was a final bullet left, Han Xiao used it to initiate the continuous gliding shots. At that point in time, Pan Kuang's clothing was burnt completely, and his hair also started burning. The price Han Xiao had to pay was the endurance of the magnetic armor, which fell after the relentless, powerful slashes by Pan Kuang. Han Xiao focused hard. At the cost of taking another powerful blow, he put away the berserk eagles and took out the retractable machete. He held the machete in his right hand and the mechanical arm in his left. It was as if a barbarian had taken over his body. He had the courage of a beast that was unafraid of death. He was ready to give Pan Kuang a hard fight, which was also likely to be a bloody one. The three items that Han Xiao was equipped with could all be used as shields, and in comparison, Pan Kuang was heavily disadvantaged since he could only use his body to defend Han Zhao's strikes. However, in reality, Pan Kuang was steadily gaining ground. For most of the time, Han Xiao could only make a strike at Pan Kuang after receiving 7 slashes. The fighting abilities of the two individuals were too far apart. Pan Kuang was a legitimate pugilist, and his fighting technique was stronger than that of Han Xiao by leaps and bounds. Han Zhao's close-range combat technique was considered a joke by Pan Kuang. If not for the gear he was equipped with, Pan Kuang would be unscathed by Han Zhao's attacks. "You want to fight me up close? Don't you think that you are courting death?" Pan Kuang could not understand how Han Xiao had the courage to challenge a pugilist in close quarters. In his mind, he considered such an act to be extremely arrogant. Han Xiao was challenging Pan Kuang's greatest strength with his greatest weakness. A slash toward Han Zhao's face resulted in a deep cut that bled profusely. Han Xiao had taken off his mask before the battle, as he had been afraid that it would be destroyed in the battle. He revealed his genuine appearance and Pan Kuang recognized him. Han Xiao was the traitor that escaped from the organization not long ago. 0. Why did number 0 attack him here? Pan Kuang did not know, and he did not care. He only knew that the man before him was an enemy, and all Pan Kuang wanted to do was to hack him to death. The force from the slashes shocked Han Zhao's body a few times. His HP decreased, but he remained calm. The reason he dared to fight Pan Kuang close up was because he had faith in himself. The previous shots, explosions and strikes had managed to lower Pan Kuang's HP by 700 to 800 points. Under the protection of the magnetically controlled retractable armor, his HP only fell by 300 points. The armor managed to prevent a total damage of at least 150 points of HP. The armor was not even meant to be worn by Han Xiao at his current level. The armor had a defense of 75 points. It was strong and useful even until higher levels of 40 to 50. Han Xiao depended greatly on the armor. With the armor, he had the ability to fight opponents of much higher levels. Han Xiao locked his hand and grabbed hard on Pan Kuang blade-wielding hand. Pan Kuang was not afraid. He twisted his arm flexibly and broke free. At the same time, he gave Han Xiao another slash, which landed on the lightweight mechanical arm. If not for the platinum alloy, the mechanical arm would have long disintegrated into pieces and shards. Han Xiao attentively discovered that Pan Kuang had a brief moment after every strike when he slowed down. Pan Kuang was instinctively trying to conserve his energy. He is starting to feel tired. He used up too much of his energy and lost his additional attributes. He is no longer sharp. Han Xiao's eyes started flashing, and his sharp acumen allowed him to discover Pan Kuang's weakness. The moment that he was waiting for had arrived. He selected an option on his interface. A new character, Norsa Connor. The summon card for character has been used. 1/1 card used. The card has been exhausted and will disappear. Pan Kuang saw a faint shadow at Han Xiao's back. An eerie-eyed individual appeared in rainbow-colored mist. Pan Kuang felt that the individual looked familiar. Who is that? He looks like Norsa. Isn't Norsa long dead? What's going on? Pan Kuang was alarmed and wanted to move back, but it was all too late. He succumbed to the illusion and was paralyzed. Scanning. The scan is complete. The target has an INT of less than 50. The illusion is successful. Pan Kuang was a LV.38 pugilist with high agility and attack power. Therefore, it was almost impossible for his intelligence to exceed 50. If Han Xiao was really that unlucky and Pan Kuang did have higher than expected intelligence, Han Xiao would have had choice but to resign to his fate. The illusion confused Pan Kuang, who was totally unprepared for it. All the attacks from the illusion could deal real damage to Pan Kuang, but ultimately, Pan Kuang had a relatively high level, so he would not be defeated if Han Xiao relied on the illusion alone. Without hesitation, Han Xiao's lightweight mechanical arm headed for Pan Kuang's crotch, which housed his most vulnerable body part. Megaload. The power of the mechanical increased by 30% instantly, and the punch landed right on the target. Pan Kuang's wiener exploded. Han Xiao had learned this move after observing a series of tapes. He had derived this legendary move from the faraway home of the warrior, the third twilight. Once the move was activated, even the skies would tremble. Han Xiao had no time to look at the messages on the interface. He needed to make use of the period when Pan Kuang was distracted by the illusion to deal as much damage as he could. Han Xiao immediately activated the pressure compressor in the palm of the mechanical arm. His palm went through a sudden vibration, and a shockwave was sent out. Blood seeped out of Pan Kuang's skin, and a blood-red triangle could be seen on Pan Kuang's crouch. Of course, Han Xiao's right hand was also put to use. Using the machete held in his right hand, Han Xiao stabbed hard into Pan Kuang's chest without any hesitation. Pan Kuang was still affected by the illusion, and thus, the protective energy shielding his body was non-existent. The stab successfully pierced through Pan Kuang. Han Xiao then reached out for his berserk eagles, and stuck the barrels of the pistols right where Pan Kuang's heart was. He used his wind-gliding steps to drag Pan Kuang backwards together with him. Han Xiao fired the shots continuously, and all the bullets went into Pan Kuang's body. Blood spurted out. There was a burning sound of the scorching ember sizzling human flesh. Ka ka ka. All the bullets in the magazine were expended, and Pan Kuang was finally awake. The sharp pain sent Pan Kuang into thunderous fury, and his face twisted in agony. He slashed hard at Han Xiao's abdomen. It seemed Pan Kuang wanted an eye for an eye. Han Xiao used his energy to control the magnetic retractable armor to shield himself from the strike. Although he was protected, the shock from the strike still made Han Xiao pale. He could sense a chilly wave of energy going all the way up to his forehead via his spine. Enduring the pain, Han Xiao expanded the reach of the mechanical arm to press hard onto Pan Kuang's head. Pan Kuang was hurled to the ground back and forth. The back of Pan Kuang's head, after coming into contact with the ground so many times, started bleeding profusely, forming a puddle of blood on the ground. Coupled with growls of agony, Pan Kuang was desperately trying to retaliate by slashing his machete hysterically. The slashes landed on Han Xiao's armor, and his HP was steadily decreasing. The crack of 100 winds. Pan Kuang yelled manically before his blade suddenly let out a blinding glare. Han Xiao was alarmed and moved backward immediately. At this time, explosions of light emerged from the wind-slicing blade. They surrounded Pan Kuang like a tornado. Countless slash marks could be seen on the surrounding ground. Han Xiao suffered a head-on attack, and his armor was losing endurance. This move had a damage radius that was too large for the armor to offer complete protection. Every part not protected by the armor turned bloody. There was a series of damage inflicted on Han Xiao, and each amounted to 40 points. The light from blade continued to glare for about 3 seconds before disappearing. Han Xiao retreated about 10 meters. He took a deep breath. Droplets containing blood and sweat were dripping down as he stared at Pan Kuang. The previous attack must have consumed much of Pan Kuang's energy. Also, the cooldown period for the move was definitely long. Therefore, Pan Kuang would not be able to use it anytime soon. Pan Kuang supported his body using the blade and stood up. He looked ghastly, and his lower body was in a bloody mess. There were charred bullet marks in his chest, and the ember was still scorching his body, giving out a smell of burnt charcoal. The burning and bleeding were dealing him continuous damage, and one could not imagine how his damaged body looked from the inside. The retractable machete was still stuck in his chest. His face looked even more horrifying. His nose had broken and was dented inward, and his skull was exposed from the back of his head. He looked like a savage ghost. A savage ghost. The savage ghost stared hard at Han Xiao. Han Xiao looked alarmed. He was prepared to use all his additional points to increase his endurance. That was another trump card he held. The howling wind brought the sand along while, at the same time, seemingly bringing away the murderous atmosphere. Pan Kuang's head drooped down, and he stopped breathing. The final sign of life was decimated by the scorching burn. Pan Kuang was like a camel that was knocked to the ground by a piece of grass. You killed Pan Kuang. LV38. 21,000 EXP gained. The enemy killed was 10 levels above you. You gained an additional 280% experience, worth 58,800 points. Your individual contribution rate was 99%. You gained an additional 58,212, 99%, points of EXP. Assassination 3 completed. Contribution rate was 99%. You gained 79,200 EXP. A total EXP of 158,500. That was Han Xiao's total gain from the successful killing of Pan Kuang. A victory against opponents of higher levels could generate additional rewards. To activate such additional rewards, the opponent defeated needed to be at least 5 levels higher. The additional EXP was in accordance to the respective contribution rates of the member of a team, since most missions were team challenges. If any member of the team failed to meet the criteria mentioned, the entire team would be deprived of the additional rewards. Such a measure highlighted the importance of good cooperation, and cheating from the players was prevented. It also prevented the occurrence of freeloaders that leached onto the efforts of others. Han Xiao finally relaxed and sat on the ground. He then lay down, allowing the rays of sunlight to hit his face. He closed his eyes in peace and enjoyed the calm and silence after the battle, as if all the damage and destruction did not exist. A thought suddenly flashed in his mind, and he immediately jumped up and checked his pants. The little Han Xiao in his pants was all good. He heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, the sleeping dragon in his pants had not been damaged at all. After a short rest, Han Xiao started to check on the damage. The endurance levels for all his equipment had dropped drastically. The delayed explosion explosives had all been used. His HP had started to recover, and the overall damage was within his expectations. Han Xiao walked to Pan Kuang's dead body, which was still in an upright position. He searched for any loot, and found a hard object in Pan Kuang's pocket. He took it out and discovered that it was a communication device from the Germinal organization. Han Xiao thought for a moment and decided to activate the device. 10 seconds later, a virtual image of the chief of the Germinal organization appeared. Jia, have you guys retreated successfully? The chief was halfway through his words when he realized that something was amiss with the image transmitted over from the other side. It was Han Xiao. The chief changed his expression immediately and glared at Han Xiao. Why are you here? Zero was using Jia's communication device, and it was apparent that the base had been completely destroyed. It was also highly likely that Pan Kuang was dead. You have the audacity to contact me? The enraged chief exclaimed. Yo, haven't seen you for a long time. Han Xiao laughed. It felt weird that Han Xiao was talking to him like a long-lost friend. The chief could not think of a reply immediately, so he paused for a moment. The chief then questioned, where did you obtain the confidential information? That was the greatest puzzle in the chief's mind. Why do you think I will tell you the answer? Han Xiao replied snobbishly. Do you think you can damage the power of the organization with such means? What a fool, the chief yelled back. I sabotaged 4 of your bases. I can destroy you easily with my hands. I sabotaged 4 of your bases. There are many executive officers in the organization. You won't be out there for long. I sabotaged 4 of your bases. Ah, too angry. From the tone of the chief's words, it sounded as if he was chewing on metal, and every word was filled with the utmost determination to kill Han Xiao. Don't you think that you will be able to escape from our clutches by pledging your allegiance to Star Dragon? My guys will disintegrate every bone and tendon in you once they catch you. Han Xiao started laughing. Following that, he blew a kiss at the chief. Come and find me if you can? Ha ha ha. The chief was completely enraged upon hearing Han Xiao's words of contempt. He wanted to say something, but before he could, Han Xiao destroyed the communication device. The screen blacked out. The chief's words of fury were stuck in his throat. He was shaking in anger. Increased the bounty on Zero to $5 million. The bounty increased by 5 times. Han Xiao wiped his smile away. Teasing the chief was not just a random act of entertainment. The Germinal organization was bound to send members to the West capital to find him. They would not rest until he was dead. The situation seemed disadvantageous to him, but in actual fact, it was not. Because Han Xiao never wanted to return to Star Dragon. Initially, Han Xiao turned to Star Dragon to seek temporary asylum from the Germinal organization and had the motive of advancing skills. He had long planned to use his facial simulator as a way to escape. Once he had the facial simulator, it was almost impossible for the Germinal organization to locate him. He no longer had to worry about being discovered and captured, which meant that he could go anywhere he wanted. He did not want to be restricted to an area where there was always a risk of angering the head of state. Furthermore, he could mislead the Germinal organization with regards to his whereabouts, for them to focus all their attention on Star Dragon. That was definitely not fun for Han Xiao. Definitely not. Even if he wanted to borrow Star Dragon's strength and resources to crush the Germinal organization, he no longer needed to put himself under the government's control. Naturally, Star Dragon did not fully trust him despite its amicable treatment of him. They had planted an extremely discreet GPS locator in his encrypted phone, which he had discovered long ago. It was finally the time for him to disarm it. It was last 3 months before the open beta. He needed to level up quickly and accumulate more resources. There were countless missions on the planet, and he treasured every one of them greatly. He had accumulated sufficient resources while working with Division 13. It was now time to drop his pretense of sincerity toward Star Dragon and go solo. He could now go anywhere he wanted on the vast planet. His plans were meticulous and closely linked. In Han Zhao's eyes, his pleasant relationship with Star Dragon was not enough to convince him to stay in a place that lacked the potential to become more powerful. Furthermore, once they reached version 2.0, even the Six Nations and the Germinal organization would become feeble. These entities were now powerful and stable, and could fight with one another through both open and secret means. However, the moment a planetary-grade disaster swept the planet, they would realize that their individual interests were hollow and meaningless compared to the survival of the whole civilization. Their statuses now were like colorful bubbles flying under the sunlight. They could easily burst with a slight poke. Version 1.0 hasn't started. It will last for 7 months in real life, which translates to about 3.5 years in game time. Additionally, the time in game between the version updates will last for a year. This means that I am still 5 years away from the undead crisis. The undead crisis was a huge disaster. It will be better for me to avoid the beginning of it at the start of version 2.0, which will be the most dangerous and chaotic period. This means that in these 5 years, I will have to dig out all the things are useful for me on this planet, and then find a way to leave this planet for a while. Han Xiao was in deep thought. Suddenly, a new message was shown on the interface. Camp mission. Destroy Dark Crow Valley base, completion rate 100%. Contribution rate 72%. You gained 36,000 EXP. Mission ended. It seemed that the Heslian army just finished the battle. Han Xiao was quite satisfied with the result. He would only have gotten a completion rate of 40 to 50% if he did not kill Pan Kuang and gang. It had been worth the trouble to infiltrate alone and plant 2 spies in the base, which allowed him to monitor the enemy's movements the whole time. This was the reason he had received such a high contribution rate and reward. Camp Destroyer mission, Dark Crow Valley base, has been completed. You completed. Reconnaissance I. Reconnaissance 2. Dark Crow Forest Assassin. Direct conflict. Assassination 2. Assassination 3. Destroy Dark Crow Valley base. Calculating mission stats. Calculation completed. Performance rating, excellent. Reputation with Star Dragon Strategic Defense Department, increased by 1,120. Current relationship, friendly, 1370/3000. Reputation with the Germinal Organization, decreased by 500. Current relationship, hatred, -1500/3000. You received an excellent performance rating. Additional 50% EXP, 18,000. Random reward X1. Random reward type is being decided. Can't believe there is a random reward. Seems like I'm quite lucky this time. Han Xiao was delighted. Large-scale missions and serial missions would release performance ratings upon completion. The probability of an excellent rating triggering a random award was only 30%, so it was rather uncommon. The system would decide first which type of random reward the player would receive. It could be anything, such as EXP, equipment, skills, stat points, or talent points. Then, the player could select the choices provided under the reward. You received the random reward type. Innate ability. Randomizing. Randomization complete. Please choose one option from the following. Strengthen body. HP plus 400, abnormality resistance plus 4%. Quick pace. Agility plus 6, attack speed plus 5%. Strengthen spirit. Mystery plus 5, willpower resistance plus 8%. Han Xiao held onto his chin and started deliberating. All 3 abilities had mediocre effects. Strengthen body, increased health points, so it was more suited for tank players. Usually, he employed long-range attacks, and he still had a magnetic suit to protect his body, so he did not require the additional HP for now. Quick pace seemed decent. Agility affected many different aspects of a long-range attacks, including accuracy, critical rate, and movement speed, etc. This ability could potentially increase his attack output by 8 to 10%. Strengthen spirit was only useful for mages and psychics. Han Xiao thus opted for quick paced. You gained an innate ability, quick paced. Han Xiao looked at his interface. He still had 12 unassigned stats that he had gained from leveling up. He then added them all into intelligence. His intelligence was now his highest stat, standing at 88 points. There was an increase of 1.8% on the A-class quest, Fall of the Germinal. Although it did not look like a significant increase for now, Xiao Han knew that the future potential gains would be much greater. at least 10 to 15% more. Because Dark Crow Valley Base was the nearest point of contact for future players to join the Germinal organization. Without it, many real players would join a camp that was nearer and more convenient for them. This would greatly contain the rate of expansion of the Germinal organization in the near future. The head of Germinal still did not realize the importance of this base. He was only dismayed by the loss of an ordinary large base. Intel from Han Xiao allowed other powers an opportunity to attack the Germinal organization. The mission progress he received from such events was less than a direct assault by himself, based on the calculation of contribution rating. But if he were to insist on attacking the organization personally, the individual damage he could deal would not be sufficient to keep up with organization's rate of expansion. Naturally, his best option was to mass distribute intel that could harm the organization. The minimum progress needed for the Camp Destroyer mission was only 20%. It was not required for him to chase after perfection, lest he risked losing out on other missions. It is time to change the method of supplying intel. Han Xiao squinted. After completing the mission, it was time for him to work on other important things. Han Xiao went onto the radio and spoke to Lin Yao. How is the situation now? Brother Xiao. The Heslian army has seized all the supplies in Dark Crow Valley Base. They also captured a few hundred of their members, including Dormant. Unfortunately, the two directors, Pan Kuang and Ji Jia, got away. Where is the army now? They are still sweeping the battleground. They will probably retreat to the border tomorrow. Okay. Message received. After the Heslian army finished sweeping the battleground, they set up camp on site and prepared for a withdrawal the next day. Lin Yao and Lambert went on to meet up with the rest, and the Division 13 agents gathered to commend them for their excellent intel work. The younger generation of agents is very capable, Ma Qingyang commented. Xiao Lin, your teammates have done a great job, said Di Su Su. The rest chimed in. You guys did an excellent job. Really commendable. We acted under the directions given by Brother Xiao. Lin Yao was feeling slightly uneasy with all the praise. The fellow Division 13 agents realized that it was Han Xiao who deserved all the recognition. Qi Baijia decided to praise Han Xiao's contribution strongly in his report. However, he realized that Han Xiao was still not back. Hey, where is he? He is probably delayed by certain things. As the sky turned dark, Han Xiao was still nowhere to be seen. How is he still not back? Li Yilin was puzzled, so she nudged Lin Yao to prompt him to contact Han Xiao. I tried to communicate with him more than 40 times, but he still hasn't answered. Lin Yao was out of options. It was dawn. The Heslian army was ready to move back to the border, but Han Xiao was still missing. Division 13 agents started imagining the possibilities for such an odd happening. Zhang Wei had a sudden thought. Is it possible that Han Xiao has already moved back to the border? This is possible. Han Xiao has always moved around on his own. He may think that it is not necessary for him to meet up with them now. Everyone pondered over this possibility. All the agents followed the army back while this worry lingered in their minds. The Hesla troops looked relaxed and were rather undisciplined on the way back. In the middle of the troops, Colonel Carl was sitting in the command vehicle. He was deliberating over a very grave problem. In this mission, he did not have an outstanding performance. Instead, he made a critical error in his decision, which resulted in unnecessary casualties. This would most definitely lead to a poor evaluation of his ability by the higher-ups. He had to artificially raise his significance in this mission to obtain more merits for this attack. If I could take credit for Division 13's contribution, Carl had an idea. He could perhaps write on the report that it was him who instructed Han Xiao to take his two teammates to spy in the base that gave them critical intel. In this scenario, his significance as a commanding office would be greatly elevated. This can work. Division 13 will leave as soon as the mission is completed. They can't possibly come to Hesla and expose me. Furthermore, my report to the higher-ups will be kept secret from everyone else. All of a sudden, there was a commotion coming from the outside of the vehicle, and Carl realized that the troops had stopped moving. Colonel, there are two corpses in front of us. They seem to be Pan Kuang and Ji Jia. Carl was in shock. He left the vehicle quickly to check out the bodies. It was really the two directors of the base. The troops were astonished, and they started chattering. They remembered how strong these two directors had been just few days ago. But they had been killed just like this. Who did this? Who left the bodies here? Carl shouted. Nobody had an answer as the troops looked at one another. They had just discovered the bodies. Division 13 soon arrived at the scene upon hearing the commotion. They were too dumbfounded. It must be Han Zhao's doing. It's unbelievable that he actually succeeded. But why did he place the bodies on the road? This is just giving free credit to the Heslians. Carl was beaming joyously. He could claim credit for killing the directors. He waved at his troops to wrap up the bodies and take them back to camp. Just as the troops moved the bodies, the sound of landmines being activated was heard. The troops were terrified, and they quickly jumped away in different directions. Carl was caught off guard. He only had the time to drop on the floor. However, there was no explosion after seconds had passed. A brave soldier stood up and went to dig out the landmines. He weighed it in his hand and realized that it was very light. This is not a real mine. They are all empty. The troops were infuriated by the prank. This is not funny at all. What a wretched move. I just peed in my pants. Division 13 agents had a weird look on their faces. They did not know whether to laugh at what they saw. This seems like something Han Xiao would do, Li Yilin mumbled. Carl stood up with a flustered look on his face. His clean and well-pressed officer uniform was now covered in mud and grass. He was now livid. He knew it was Xiao Han who did it. He wanted to ruffle him with a prank like this. What a childish play, he said in anger. Bang! A faint gunshot was heard far away. The bullet pierced through Carl's temple, and it brought a dash of blood out of his head. Carl's eyes were still wide open. He was unable to comprehend what had just transpired, totally caught unaware. His eyes were filled with the longing for life, and a pinch of disbelief. His body wobbled before it landed flat on the floor. Just a moment ago, he had been dreaming of his military success and his bright future. He could not believe that he had been killed on the way back to claim credit for his success in the mission. At this moment, everyone, including the Division 13 agents and the troops, was shell-shocked. They could not believe what had just happened before their eyes. On a faraway cliff top, Han Xiao raised his head from the scope of a sniper. He was looking relaxed. What goes around comes around. Han Xiao had gone to the road the night before when the troops were camping at the battleground. He had planted a trap using the corpses of Pan Kuang and Ji Jia to lure Colonel Carl out of his vehicle. The moment Carl stepped out of his command vehicle, Han Xiao had the opportunity to snipe him down. Additionally, he had placed a blank landmine beneath the bodies to scare the troops out of their formation, so that he could get a better shot at Colonel Carl from the distant cliff. Killing a high-ranking Hesla officer in front of everybody was bound to raise suspicion from the Heslians. They could probably deduce that it was Han Xiao who did it based on the use of the two bodies, but Han Xiao was not at all worried. They had no concrete evidence to prove that he was guilty. As long as Division 13 denied it, all Hesla could do was protest diplomatically. They could never hold Han Xiao accountable. Just like Carl did not care if the enemy killed them, Zhang Wei's team could also push the blame to the escaped personnel from the Dark Crow Valley base. I can be just as devious as you, Carl. Han Xiao cocked the barrel, and the smoky bullet cartridge fell out. He conveniently tossed it into his pocket, leaving no trace behind. Carl's order had almost taken his life. He was bound to take revenge after the mission was completed. Han Xiao had once been a real player who had always taken revenge when someone, regardless of who they were, harmed him. And he would avenge himself in all sorts of ways without saying much. Han Xiao saw that the Hesla troops were in a mess through his scope. Some of the troops were furious. They boarded their vehicles and moved rapidly toward the source of the fire. He calmly stowed the dissembled sniper into his backpack. He had handpicked the position for an easy escape after the assassination. After turning around, he jumped off the cliff, and a feeling of freefall hit him immediately. He smacked the button on his back, and two fine foldable metal wings expanded. He was then gliding in the air toward the forest beneath the cliff. Sky Swallow gliders. When the Hesla troops arrived at the cliff, all they could see was a nimble shadow rapidly disappearing before their eyes. Division 13 agents were still dumbfounded. They could not believe that Han Xiao had the guts to kill a commanding officer from Hesla. It was definitely a good way to vent one's anger, but there would be dire consequences. Nothing was worse than killing a Hesla high-ranking military officer right on their land. It seemed that Han Xiao had the balls of steel. Qi Baijiao was greatly anxious, but when he saw that the Hesla troops had not caught anyone, he was relieved. Thank goodness he got away. In this case, they cannot prove that he is guilty. We can still argue our case. Wait, if Han Xiao disappears, are we going to take his place in the trials? Everyone's eyes were wide open. They felt it was something that Han Xiao would definitely do. How can he just push all the troubles to us? He is such a master at shirking responsibility. The surrounding Hesla troops raised their rifles in anger and pointed them at the Division 13 agents. They were arrested, locked up in the cars, and escorted back to the border camp. As soon as deputy officer reported the incident, Hesla's government was furious. Hesla's agents had to interrogate Division 13, as they were the prime suspect. However, they soon became frustrated. Division 13 insisted that they did not know anything about the incident. Winna felt a sense of defeat. Everyone knew that Han Xiao had done it, but no one had any evidence to prove that it was him. They could not even find the cartridge, which meant the only thing they could do was interrogate Division 13 over and over again. Since they could not use torturous methods to extort information, because they were up against the Star Dragon agents, their efforts were in vain. Moreover, the condemnation from the higher-ups of Hesla was met with empty excuses from Division 13. The head of intelligence in Division 13 took a private jet to quickly arrive at the Hesla border in order to rescue his agents. Without any concrete evidence, Hesla had to release the Division 13 agents. The head of intelligence brought everyone out of the interrogation room and back to the jet. He ordered Qi Baijiao to report on the details of the incident after he was certain that there was no Hesla personnel around. He is such a troublemaker. Fortunately, he did not leave any trace. Otherwise, Hesla would not have rested until they found him, he said. Qi Baijiao was feeling embarrassed and dared not reply. Ultimately, he had to take the full responsibility as the Star Dragon leader of this mission. The head of intelligence looked at him without saying a word. He reflected on the reaction of the higher-ups in Division 13 upon hearing this news. They believed that Karl's orders were authorized by the high-ranking officials in Hesla. It was the only reasonable conclusion to explain why Hesla purposefully sent a radical officer to helm this mission. They were displeased with Hesla's insidious acts. It was actually quite a good ending. After all, Hesla failed in causing any harm to Star Dragon agents, and yet, they lost a high-ranking officer. They even had to swallow the loss without catching the culprit. This fellow did an excellent job. The head of intelligence nodded quietly. This time, even the hawks in the department had nothing critical to say about this incident. In fact, they loved what Han Xiao did. If one had the audacity to plot against Star Dragon, the retaliation would be swift and deadly. Despite the appreciation, the heads of the department unanimously agreed in the previous internal meeting that they had to impose greater control on Han Xiao and not let him escape their surveillance. As their source of valuable intel, Han Xiao was far too important to warrant any accidents or mishaps. Because of Han Xiao's cooperative attitude, they had been too lenient with his actions, but since the incident from the joint mission, they became deeply alarmed. They came to the consensus to reject any of Han Xiao's future mission requests. This motion was passed without any objection, even from the conservatives in the Division 13. The department was still willing to cooperate with Han Xiao, but before divulging all the intel he had, he would not leave the headquarters surveillance. The head of intelligence finished contemplating and looked at the team of agents. He then looked at his watch and said in a puzzled tone, "Why is Han Xiao still not back?" "I have no idea." Qi Baijiao shook his head. "Han Xiao just contacted me." Lin Yao suddenly pressed his headphone as he became overly excited. But the next second his expression changed drastically. What did he say? The head of intelligence had a bad hunch. Brother Xiao said, "He is going to lie low until the dust settles," Lin Yao stammered. "Lie low until the dust settles?" This means. The head of intelligence was slow to process the meaning of this message. Then, he quickly realized what it meant. He is not coming back. His expression turned ghastly. Zhang Wei looked shell-shocked. Li Yilin was wide-eyed. Lambert was in disbelief. Everyone was utterly shocked. It looked as if he was really going solo. There was really nothing he was afraid to do. 20 minutes later in Division 13's headquarters, Gu Hui called for an emergency meeting. The directors who were not stationed at the headquarters joined the video conference. Everyone had a solemn look. Han Xiao ran away, Gu Hui said in a sobering tone. Everyone gasped. Is he defecting? Unclear. Before this, he sniped a Heslian military officer. It is possible that he is afraid of the consequences, so he escaped. But this possibility is not high, the head of intelligence replied. The other heads were irritated. That reason was highly improbable, unless Han Xiao believed that Star Dragon was incapable of protecting him, which also meant that Han Xiao looked down at their abilities. What about the GPS tracker that we planted in his phone? The tracker has not moved in the last 24 hours. Han Xiao discovered and removed it. He is going to defect. He must be still near us, and heading toward the wilderness. We have to bring him back, the head of internal affairs thundered. We cannot be certain that he is defecting. Gu Hui waved his hands disapprovingly. All the heads simmered silently. They had been planning to restrict him in the West capital the moment he was back. But his sudden escape had ruined all their plans. Was it a premeditated move? Or was it just a spur-of-the-moment decision? Was it defection? Or was it something else? Standard protocol indicated that when an agent broke contact, and when the exact cause behind the disappearance was inconclusive, the first thing they needed to do was send people to track the agent down. Then, they would contact the agent to make a judgment based on their reaction for the subsequent course of actions. If the agent resisted the capture or continued to run, they would have no choice but to hunt the agent down globally. If the agent had a good reason, the protocol ensured that a misunderstanding and manslaughter were avoided. This is just in. The German organization has increased the reward for capturing or killing Han Xiao by 5 times to 5 million on the dark net. The head of intelligence said all of a sudden. Everyone was utterly surprised. This mission had been announced as a joint exercise between the two countries. How did the German organization know that Han Xiao was the main catalyst? Was there a mole within them? The increase in reward implied that the German organization was determined to kill Han Xiao more than ever. Furthermore, the organization had already located Han Xiao to be in the West capital. Could that have been the reason for Han Xiao's departure? Was he not afraid of being located by the organization in the wilderness and slaughtered? The German organization was way more unhinged in the wilderness. They could very well fire missiles to bombard the whole area. He came to Star Dragon to seek protection in the first place. How did he suddenly have the guts to leave? This question lingered in everyone's mind. Gu Hui knocked on table and concluded the meeting. We will continue to keep his identity as our agent and file him under missing personnel. The intelligence department will collect the surveillance tapes, migration records, and transport records from everywhere to try and contact him. We will also send out search teams to find him. We must get hold of him first before any subsequent action. Seconded. 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 On the private jet back, the Division 13 agents constantly peeked at the corner, where Zhang Wei's team was. It was like the center of a high-pressure vortex. Zhang Wei pinched the bridge of his nose with a look of seriousness. The veins on his forehead were showing clearly. Lambert was wiping his knife in silence. Li Yilin was constantly shaking her legs, with a look of indignation and anxiousness. Her tight black body suit outlined her beautiful and seductive long legs. Ling Yao was sitting at the side, frightened. He wanted to get away from his raging teammates, but was afraid of doing so. He trembled in fear. This is too much. He just left without saying anything to us. He clearly does not treat us as his teammates. Li Yilin slammed hard on the table. The thundery sound spooked all the other agents that were eavesdropping in the surrounding. Zhang Wei's hands held onto half of his face, and he looked as if he had nothing to live for. He modified my armored suit, and no one else knows how to repair it, he mumbled. It was such a tragedy. The other agents did not know how to console Zhang Wei. He asked me to take business orders for him, and he already collected the deposit for a few dozen orders. What do I do now? Li Yilin clenched her teeth in rage. The other agents were startled. They realized that they had also made some orders. Crap. Our deposits. I used my reputation to guarantee to his business. He totally ruined my reputation. Li Yilin now sounded like a grudging wife who was being cheated on. She pinched Lin Yao's arm in an attempt to release her anger. Lin Yao felt an immense pain. He immediately jumped far away and said hastily, "Calm down. Calm down. Do you know his real identity?" Lambert suddenly commented. The three of them were startled. They were unaware of his real identity, even after being on the same team for so long. Han Xiao had always been rather mysterious, and he had never divulged any information related to his real identity. Even the higher-ups had refused to tell the team. At this moment, everyone was dispirited. "When I find him, I will definitely beat the crap out of him," Li Yilin said in an infuriated voice as she cracked her knuckles loudly. 2 days later in Hesla's Morning Wind City, a coastal city near the border, Morning Wind City had a massive seaport that handled a massive volume of transcontinental ships. The city was a metropolis with many high-rise buildings. Hesla had the strongest maritime force among the 6 nations. It focused on developing its navy to protect its numerous coastal cities. There were 4 continents on Aquamarine. They were separated from one another by the massive oceans. There was an old saying, "He who controls the sea controls everything." There were tons of resources beneath the seafloor, including petroleum and natural gases. Extraction of fossil fuels from the sea was the main pillar of Hesla's economy. Han Xiao remembered that Hesla had a secret military strategy called the Fourth Contingency Plan against Great Crisis. The plan was to produce many thousand-meter-long motherships in preparation for the scenario that the country suffered from massive calamities, such as nuclear world war. They could transition into a drifting nation on the sea and preserve their population. Although this strategy eventually paved way for others, their spirit of preparing for the worst in times of peace was worth emulating. As the saying went, one who prospers in worries and hardships perishes in ease and comfort. It meant that if one did not create some sort of trouble, one might as well not live. Wait, that does not sound right. Well, it's not important. Now Han Xiao, with a new face, was waiting at the branch of Fabian Company in the city. He had used the black gold card from Matthews to receive VIP treatment at the place. It was his temporary rest stop. There were 3 months to open beta, and moving around on his own would yield him the greatest amount of benefits. He could use Fabian Company's channels to purchase mechanical parts with the huge amount of cash that he had accumulated to make more machinery. He could then earn a lot of EXP from this, and even sell his products for more cash. Old Man Lu's secret quest would only be triggered after the open beta. He had established a good relationship with him, so he was in no rush to continue this mission. Han Xiao wrote down the key points for personal development for this last period of time before the open beta. Trigger all the high-reward quests, and subsequently obtain rare skills and abilities to improve my power. Obtain stable supply channels for mechanical parts, so as to allow myself to make machinery during the course of my quests and earn more EXP. Continue to cause destruction for the Germinal organization. Increase my personal mission issuances reward limit in preparation for the open beta. These are roughly the points of focus. Han Xiao put down his pen and began thinking carefully. The first point was easy since he remembered many large-scale quests. Also, supply channels could simply be obtained from the Fabian Company with the help of the black gold VIP card. Destroying the Germinal organization was his A-class quest. He had some initial thoughts on how he could maximize his large reservoir of intel. He could utilize the help from all the powers that were hostile toward the organization. As for his personal mission reward limit, Han Zhao's goal was to increase his universal reputation. Because there were 2 types of reward limits, daily limit and individual quest limit. He could increase both by improving his universal reputation. This was the most cost-effective method. His universal reputation was now 0, but that was okay. Han Xiao would definitely increase it in due time. There were 3 ways to obtain universal reputation. The first method was by achieving high contribution ratings in advanced and rare quests. Normally, only a planet's main quest line would reward universal reputation. His A-class quest, Fall of the Germinal, every planet, not only limited to novice planets, had at least one or more major storylines that linked to the respective main quests. For example, in Planet Aquamarine version 1.0, there were 2 main storylines and 1 hidden storyline. The conflict between the 6 nations and the Germinal organization was one of the main storylines. The others would only appear in the open beta. On the other hand, the hidden storyline could only be discovered by luck. That method of obtaining universal reputation was highly difficult and time-consuming. He could not achieve it in a short time frame. The second method was rather random. It involved doing things related to one's reputation with a camp that could potentially become well known. The things could be very varied and circumstantial. Nobody had a clear idea of how to do it, and it was quite unreliable. Han Xiao was keen on applying the third method, getting on top of some ranking lists, the easiest way to obtain universal reputation. Some factions had created publicly recognized rankings. By climbing to the top of rankings, he could easily obtain universal reputation. However, if some new guys were to push him down the ranking, his universal reputation would decrease, making this method unreliable. That was the method employed by most real players. Universal reputation quickly helped one accumulated camp reputation, which in turn gave players discounts on NPC items and provided opportunities to trigger rare quests. Han Zhao's fingers on one hand tapped the table surface as he continued to contemplate on this, and with his other hand he picked his nose. Well, before I make a move, let me get rid all the burdens EXP I have now. He looked at his character interface, which showed a grand total of 720,000 EXP. He directly channeled all the EXP into leveling his character to 30. His stats consequently increased. Mechanic Novice reached the maximum level. The last level up always gave players the greatest stats increase. This time he received a 90-point increase in his energy between levels 9 and 10. He then threw all 6 unassigned stats into his intelligence, making it 100. His mind instantly became much clearer, and he felt more at ease controlling all the machinery. Intelligence affected many different areas of a mechanic, including production speed, production quality, and the damage bonuses when using mechanic weapons. For example, when a mechanic used a pistol that normally dealt 20 damage points, the pistol would deal more damage due to the mechanic's damage bonus. As such, even though other classes of players could still use mechanic weapons, the damage would be lower. Underscore 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 underscore. Mechanic Novice has reached the maximum level. To advance, learn 20 blueprints. This randomized requirement for advancing class is quite simple. Han Xiao was delighted, and he counted the blueprints that he had learned so far. He was only short of 8. He did not want to produce useless blueprints through random fusions. I should make full use of the EXP I have. Anyway, all the EXP is stored in the interface, so there is no rush to advance my class. At Fabian Company's Morning Wind City branch, the man in charge, Antonio, was smoking a cigar. He was built like a mountain, filling the entire space on the sofa. He exhaled a puff out and looked Han Xiao, who was sitting at the sofa across, up and down to size him up. Han Xiao was wearing a black jacket, and his facial simulator simulated an ordinary unemployed, middle-aged male who looked rather unassuming. This was the face that he had prepared for his new identity. Han Xiao took out a shopping list for supplies and said slowly, "I want all the items on this list." Antonio took the list and looked over it. The total cost will be $100,000. After the 20% discount from your black gold card, it will cost $80,000. Also, I want to buy an entry pass for the Darknet's Blood Pact Society. $20,000. Antonio's eyes narrowed. The Darknet was the hub of all intelligence related to the underworld. It was fully controlled by the Darknet organization, a neutral faction that strictly followed the principles of not getting involved in conflicts and developing peacefully. Many factions were business partners with the Darknet organization. They provided people from the underworld many kinds of services, including, but not limited to, smuggled firearms, package transfers, safe houses, hired assassins, mercenaries, and intelligence. The Blood Pact Society was the organization for hired assassins under the Darknet organization. Using the entry pass, Han Xiao could become a contracted assassin under the organization and enjoy all the services provided by the Darknet. This meant that Han Xiao could unlock his relationship with the Darknet just from using the pass. Although Blood Pact Society was a lousy name, it had another world-famous name, the Assassin Union. Of course, one could also call it the Assassin Social Club, which instantly degraded its class. A player had to go through a series of complicated quests to join the Darknet organization. However, time was of the essence for Han Xiao, so he would rather use extra money to buy the pass instead of spending a few dozen days fulfilling the entry requirement. Although $20,000 was a big sum of money to real players, it was considered peanuts to him. Who says money can't buy happiness? Han Xiao muttered. When he was still a real player, he had needed to be stingy and calculative about every single purchase. He had never felt the pleasure of having so much money to spend before this. The mechanical supplies were soon transported to the private workshop that Antonio arranged for him. Han Xiao went on to repair all the equipment that was damaged during the fight against Pan Kuang. The mechanical parts left were meant for the new machinery. I will be moving alone without any team support. Thus, my fighting style should focus more on minimizing danger. Sniping better suits me temporarily. I need to develop more powerful snipers and new types of bullets. Also, I will need some explosives, booby traps, and anti-vehicle weapons. Lastly, I will probably need machinery that enables me to engage in close-quarter fights, such as tiny and covert weapons that can deal maximum damage. Han Xiao contemplated for a while before he drew out his interface to start his talent fusion. He decided to start with new bullets. Do you wish to proceed with talent fusion? LV3 Basic Weaponry plus LV3 Basic Material Science plus LV.2 Basic Dynamics Principle. This fusion will cost you 15,000 EXP. Fusion success. Congratulations. You have discovered Spindle-Shaped Penetration Bullet. Do you wish to proceed with talent fusion? LV3 Basic Weaponry plus LV3 Basic Material Science plus LV.1 Basic Biology. This fusion will cost you 15,000 EXP. Fusion success. Congratulations, you have discovered Haim Bullet. Do you wish to proceed with talent fusion? LV3 Basic Weaponry plus LV3 Basic Material Science plus LV2 Basic Optics. This fusion will cost you 15,000 EXP. Fusion success. Congratulations, you have discovered Flash Bullet. I still have over 20,000 EXP left, and my sniping capability is not yet up to standard. Let's continue. Han Xiao pondered for a moment before he decided to raise the core skill, Snipe, to LV.5, which increased his accuracy and sniping range. He had stolen the sniper rifle named Red Falcon from the Hesla Army Logistics team. The rifle was black and only a gray-grade weapon. It had mediocre quality. He soon started upgrading the weapon. Han Xiao focused on increasing the power of the sniper rifle during this series of upgrades. The damage was increased to 92-103. The rate of fire was 2 rounds per second. The range was 600 meters. But with machinery affinity and sniping, his range could reach up to 750 meters, which was sufficient for his use. Han Xiao was still left with tens of thousands of EXP, but he decided to hold on to it first. He started the production of the 3 bullets that he had previously discovered. Soon, batches of new bullets were produced. Fabian Company's private workshop was primarily adapted for making firearms and ammunition, which saved Han Xiao a fair bit of time for the whole production. This also reminded Han Xiao of something. Should I make some robot assistants to help me with the production of mechanical parts? He already had the blueprint for smart chips and other necessary parts for the robot. All he needed to do was upgrade his basic programming before he could produce a simple robot rover that could act as his assistant. However, since he did not have a fixed base for now, it was not appropriate for him to produce the robots yet. Antonio's footsteps were heard. Soon he entered the workshop. He placed an intricately designed dark gold coin onto the table and said, "This is your membership pass." Han Xiao was delighted. Hotel Victoria was a 43-floor tall luxurious hotel, and it had branches in every major city of the 6 nations. It was owned by the Darknet organization, and it only permitted members of the organization to stay. The hotel would use the excuse of no available rooms to deny normal people from staying in the place. While it acted as a safe house for the members, it was also the transaction hall for people from different camps. No fighting was allowed in this place, and anyone who broke the rule would receive endless assassinations. After obtaining the pass, Han Xiao went to Hotel Victoria. It had a classic interior, with various types of aged dark brown wooden furniture, which had a beautiful luster. A sense of serenity was overflowing in every corner of the hotel. Han Xiao came forward to the front desk before revealing his Blood Pact Society coin. Then he was brought to the 23rd floor by a servant. 23rd to 25th floors belonged to the Blood Pact Society. The 23rd floor was the resting and transaction areas for all the assassins. They would get employed or paid here. The floor also had numerous entertainment facilities, such as a bar, cafe, and restaurants. After he handed his dark golden coin to the receptionist on the 23rd floor, another server wearing a white glove came to receive Han Xiao. They sat down at a semi-private table in the corner. The server took out a notebook with black leather covers and started recording the personal information of this new member. "What will your code name be?" Han Xiao thought for a moment, and he decided to use an enchanting name, which might help his universal reputation in some ways. Apostle-level observer number 9527, from the Crimson Dynasty stationed in Kutun Group. The server was stupefied. Assassins usually had minimalist names like Silver Fox, Devil Snake, or Ghost, the kind that was more appreciated in the age when reduced attention spans were the norm. Such a unique name would really intrigue employers, but it way too long. The server coughed. "Can you shorten the name?" "What? I've only ever heard of others complaining about short names. I didn't know people would dislike name for being too long." Han Xiao pondered for a while before he came up with another name. "Black." The server was briefly rendered speechless. "Your name is too short now. A single world code name is permissible, but code names that are just colors have long been taken by other assassins. All the names like red, blue, orange, and so on were mostly names of the honored assassins of the previous generation who have passed away. The organization will not allow someone else to reuse their code names." Han Xiao smacked his lips in irritation. It seemed to him that naming was a troublesome affair anywhere he went. He then came up with the final name. "Mr. Black." "Mr. Black. All right." This name was much more ordinary. The server quickly recorded it. "You are now a reserve-level assassin with a blank resume. You can only rise to Scorpion level upon the completion of your first assignment. Employers will usually pick from our whole list of assassins. If someone chooses you, we will contact you. Until then, you can take up assignments that are open to everybody on the market or assassinate wanted personnel. Of course, you can also accept private jobs. We do not have any hard requirements for our assassins, but we will take 5% of the reward as our commission. If you have any questions in the future, you can always call up our reception at Hotel Victoria." "Sounds reasonable." Han Xiao nodded his head. There were 2 reasons for him joining the Blood Pact Society. First, he wanted to take on all the wanted personnel that warranted high bounties, and these missions would trigger high-reward quests. Secondly, he could earn some universal reputation by becoming one of the top 10 ranked assassins on the dark net. There were only 3 months till the open beta. He needed to accumulate a large base of resources using the remaining time he had. All of these are wanted assignments. The servant took out a tablet and opened a page on the dark net before passing it to Han Xiao. Han Xiao instantly saw the most popular personnel on the list himself. 0. $5 million reward. Dead or alive. Location, West Capital's Star Dragon. All the best. If he had returned to the West Capital, his movements would have been heavily restrained. Fortunately, he had escaped early. Han Xiao sniggered. It would take a long time for the Germinal organization to realize their efforts were all in vain. He was the most popular target on the wanted list, as the Germinal organization had spent a lot of effort in chasing him down and hunting him recently. But he was not the most wanted. Some of the accumulated prices had even reached tens of millions. They were mostly impossible assignments, such as stealing top-secret intelligence from a certain country. Based on the security and defense around Division 13's underground database, this mission's success rate could go as low as 0.001%, with the probability of death being 99.999%. This assignment only looked good on the list. No one would really attempt to do it. Han Xiao scanned further down the list. He soon settled on a wanted assignment. Take down the Rose Militant, a group of mercenaries active in the Samar Desert, in the Southern Land. The Southern Land was where Hesla was located, and it was also called the South Continent. It had a vast land area and tropical climate. The other continents were the North Continent, West Continent, and the Andria Continent, which located in the middle of the other three. Han Xiao picked this mission due to its close proximity. Just as he was about to accept the assignment, the server suddenly jolted and said, "Mr. Black, you have a new personal assignment." Han Xiao was pleasantly surprised. He received an assignment within 5 minutes of uploading his particulars onto the net. This organization's business is really thriving, Han Xiao remarked sincerely. The server was puzzled himself. Such happenings are actually quite rare. The employer hopes to speak with you personally. The server looked at the screen and continued. Take a seat first. He will arrive in about 10 minutes. Han Xiao complied. 10 minutes later, a middle-aged man walked in hastily. He had a head full of white hair, which made him look much older than his real age, and his expression was one of exasperation. He walked into the hall and looked left and right before he came forward to Han Xiao. I am Shan Shui. Before an assignment was officially accepted, the employer would not divulge the target's real name. Assassins could only ask for other basic information. What will the bounty for this assignment be? And tell me more about the target's protection and location. 12 to 20 bodyguards. The location is right in this city. The remuneration will be $10,000. Only $10,000? Han Xiao frowned slightly. That price was insufficient to employ an assassin. Shan Shui nodded anxiously. He had immediately been turned down by other assassins when they heard the price. He lacked enough money to pay for the usual price, so he had decided to try his luck on new assassins like Han Xiao. I will take it, Han Xiao agreed. Shan Shui cheered inwardly. He took out a stack of documents and passed them to Han Xiao. Yu Zhu, located right in Morning Wing City. Yu Zhu was a mafioso in Hesla, who was always accompanied by 12 to 16 bodyguards that were made up of retired army reconnaissance soldiers. Recently, he had expanded his influence into the territory of Morning Wind City, which belonged to the local mafia head, Shan Shui. He could not guard against Yu Zhu's invasion, and so his mafia gang had disbanded. He was now left all alone, and wanted to hire an assassin to avenge him. Han Xiao signed the contract after he finished reading the information. You have triggered an E-level quest, assassination assignment, Shan Shui. Han Xiao already knew the quest requirement. He went on to look at the reward of the quest, and it was not much, only 5,000 EXP. I'm leaving. Han Xiao stood up and prepared to leave. Shan Shui quickly stopped Han Xiao from going and asked, How long will you need to finish this job? Han Xiao paused. He looked out the window and saw that it just reached noon. I'm guessing you haven't had lunch, right? Shan Shui was startled, not understanding what Han Xiao was trying to say. Han Xiao turned his head and gave him an aloof look. He will be gone by the time you finish your lunch. Shan Shui's heart skipped a beat. Based on his impression, assassins would normally do some pre-assignment preparations, such as reconnaissance and escape route planning. Was this Mr. Black really that powerful? Or was he just being arrogant? We meet again, Mr. Chung. Shan Shui was anxiously waiting for the result of his assignment when he heard a voice. He raised his head and saw that it was the man codenamed Lawson, who had previously turned down his assignment. He was a Scorpion-level assassin. Oh, it's you. How are you doing? I have some free time for now. I can take your assignment, Lawson said coolly. Shan Shui's eyes glimmered for a moment, before they became gloomy again. I'm sorry. My assignment has already been accepted by someone else. Shan Shui gave a bitter smile. The Blood Pact Society's rule dictated that once a contract had been established, no one could alter it. Lawson was slightly disappointed upon hearing his words. He had come all the way from Red Maple to visit a friend in Hesla, and he was taking the opportunity to travel around Hesla, so he had no intention of doing any assignment on this trip. When Chengshan Shui approached him with his assignment, he had given an outright rejection because the reward for the mission was too low. But now, Lawson was feeling bored from the idling the past few days. Thus, he wanted to do some simple assignments, and he had planned to take up Chengshan Shui's mission. He was surprised that someone else had already accepted the assignment in just one day. Lawson was annoyed at the situation, but he knew that he could not break the society's rule. He had no choice but to give up on this. He then walked toward the bar and ordered a drink. After taking 2 sips from his drink, his phone suddenly rang. He looked at the incoming call. It was from an old client of his, Yu Zhu. "Hey Lawson." A man's voice was heard on the phone. "Yes, it's me. How can I help you, Mr. Yu?" Lawson said nonchalantly. "I have a job that I hope you can help with. Tell me more about it." Lawson's eyes suddenly turned sharp. "I want you to help me get rid of someone." "Who?" "I have sent the details to you." The rule of confidentiality did not apply here, since it was a private job. Lawson took out his tablet and looked over the information. He then raised his head suddenly and looked at Chengshan Shui. He was the target. "So, what do you think?" Yu Zhu asked. A group of people could be heard going down the stairs from the phone. "I will take it," Lawson replied confidently. "Great. I will ask my guy to transfer the deposit to." Boom. Suddenly, the sound of someone dropping onto the floor was heard through the phone. A gunshot was heard from a distance, and Lawson's body stiffened. He recognized the sound. It was a gunshot from a sniper rifle. Soon after, he heard people shouting and screaming in panic. He did not bother to speak as he knew Yu Zhu had just been killed by someone. This sniper killed the target, who was surrounded by a dozen bodyguards, with just one shot. He's a fine sniper. Lawson's face tensed up as he immediately deduced the whole sequence of events. Chengshan Shui's assignment was to kill Yu Zhu. After all, they were enemies. Chengshan Shui must be waiting for the sniper. "Let me see who the assassin is." Lawson's eyes flashed. Using the information provided by Chengshan Shui, Han Xiao stationed himself on top of a high-rise building a few hundred meters away from Yu Zhu's base in advance. He aimed his sniper from a high vantage point and wanted to snipe Yu Zhu through the window. However, Yu Zhu walked out of the main gate, which made Han Xiao's job much easier. Even though he was surrounded tightly by a dozen bodyguards, they were no use in defending Han Xiao's shot. His newly produced spindle-shaped penetration bullet was strong enough to penetrate any non-metal object easily. The bullet pierced through a bodyguard's body, and with no sign of slowing down, it went right into Yu Zhu's heart. One shot, one kill. Assassinating a regular person was too simple for Han Xiao. He finished the job without any hiccups. Han Xiao's facial simulator was an extremely useful tool for an escape. He changed his look and ran away easily before the commotion attracted the police. As soon as Han Xiao was back in Hotel Victoria, the troubled Chengshan Shui stood up with a look of anxiousness. "The job is done." Chengshan Shui's body loosened up instantly. He subconsciously looked at his watch, and he realized that Han Xiao had only spent 45 minutes between leaving this place and coming back, which meant he had taken less than 10 minutes for the actual assassination, after subtracting the traveling time. That was too fast. "It's for you to pay me." "Yep. Okay. Chengshan Shui was in reverence. He took out a suitcase containing $10,000 and handed it to Han Xiao. Assassination assignment, Chengshan Shui. Completed. You gain 25,000 EXP. Chengshan Shui left with light footsteps, as if he was rid of a heavy load. Han Xiao pressed the bell to call the servant in, so that he could take up the wanted job on the Rose Militant. Suddenly he was aware of something, and he turned around. "Someone is watching me." A man, sitting at the bar, looked at him as if he was sizing him up. Han Xiao did not recognize him, but the man clearly showed a hint of provocation. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes, not afraid at all, but he did not want anyone to give casual provoking looks at him. He gathered his power and threw a freezing stare toward the man to send a universal message. What are you looking at? Lawson's whole body turned rigid, as if he was being locked onto by a menacing sense of hostility. The feeling of danger was hitting his mind in waves. He hurriedly moved his eyesight away from Han Xiao, and the ill feeling finally disappeared. In just a few short seconds, Lawson's forehead had become covered in cold sweat. What a terrifying feeling. I should never provoke this guy again. Lawson quickly gave up on his previous scheming thoughts and left hastily after paying the bill, refusing to stay a moment longer. We meet again. Han Xiao smiled gently at the servant. It was the first time the servant had encountered a newbie who ranked up to an official member of the society so quickly. He was left in wonder. Now you are officially a Scorpion-level assassin. Higher tiers of benefits will be available to you. Additionally, you will receive primary VIP benefits in Hotel Victoria in other cities. What is my current ranking on the Darknet Assassins ranking list? Han Xiao suddenly asked. The servant was dumbfounded by question. Only the top-ranking assassins will appear on the list. You are at least more than 1,000 over rankings away. After speaking, he took out his tablet and opened the ranking list for Han Xiao to see. Han Xiao quietly nodded after scanning through the list. Right now, the top 10 assassins were on average at level 40. They were not of top-notch capability. Only the top 3 assassins were more terrifying as their powers were near the upper limit of version 1.0. This ranking list was determined by the number of completed assignments and other related achievements. Real players could only get on the ranking list by competing missions. The same rule applied for the ranking list of hired mercenaries. Planet Aquamarine did not have many powerful superhumans. Before the open beta, players could hardly meet any superhumans above level 40. Furthermore, those powerful individuals who were level 50 to 60 had the highest combat powers on this planet. They were generally leaders of large organizations, secret weapons, recluses, or supercriminals, and formed their own social circles. Thus, they were hardly present before the normal people and players. Players would only meet them through missions, or by getting more powerful themselves. After these thoughts flashed through Han Xiao's mind, he opened the wanted list and pointed at one of the assignment. I want to take the assignment to eliminate the Rose Militant. All right. Your request is now being processed. Please give us a few moments. The servant wrote down the request on some paper before placing it in a specially made metal tube. He went forward to the reception desk and stuck the tube into a metal pipeline, which fitted the metal tube perfectly. Swoosh. The tube was sucked into the pipeline. The tube traveled rapidly through the pipeline, bypassing numerous openings and other similar tubes, before coming to its new exit. It was a spacious room decorated like a customer service room. Rows of tables were lined up neatly with a few computers on top of them. The administrative staff were busying processing the documents on their computers, and every table was connected to the pipeline. An administrative worker dressed in an all-black suit took out the paper from the metal tube and started typing furiously on the keyboard to upload the information. Wanted target, the Rose Militant Mercenary. Requirement, complete annihilation. Initiator, Rothschild family. Location, Samar Desert. Initiated date, year 685, November 17th. Wanted amount, $3 million. Difficulty assessment, hard. Assignment record, 685.11.27. Codename, Hall Dark Level. Killed in action, 685.12.11. Codename, Bloody Hand Dark Level. Killed in action, 685.3.10. Codename, Magic Flower Dark Level, Freeman Dark Level. Killed in action. Assignment info update. The strength of the militia is currently between 80 to 120 people, including 4 superhumans, Leader Luo, Esper, Instructor Dorothy, Pugilist, Instructor Ghostly Fox, Pugilist, and Unknown, suspected to be a mechanic. They are active in the Samar Desert. Authorization approved. Assignment info updated. 688.4.1, Codename, Mr. Black, Scorpion Level. Awaiting results. At the same time, Han Xiao triggered the corresponding quest. I need to use your cargo plane, Han Xiao said to Antonio. They were in a base camp of the Fabian Company. Antonio was slightly shocked. We only use the military cargo plane for large-scale transactions. Even if you are a black gold VIP, you are still required to pay the stipulated charges, Antonio stuttered. Okay, got it. Well, how many guys you want to transport? When will they leave? Just myself. I'm leaving immediately. Antonio's chubby face was shaking like waves of water. He paused for quite a while, and eventually said, "What a waste." The military cargo plane was able to reach the destination in around a day's time. There was a simple garage available on the plane, and Han Xiao was able to create new machinery and gain experience during the trip on the plane. A trip by the plane cost $50,000. Are you serious? When can I board the plane? Han Xiao took out a large stash of cash from his briefcase that contained $100,000. 1 hour. The Fabian organization rented a stretch of runway at the Morning Wind City's airport. There were a couple of large olive green cargo planes parked. Han Xiao brought along all his gear and materials and boarded one of the planes. Soon, he could sense the vibrations. The plane started to accelerate and took off into the clouds. Once the plane regained its stability in the skies after the takeoff, Han Xiao was able to start his creations. The glaring sun was shining brightly on the endless desert. The yellow sand was heated to a temperature unbearable for the human body. A group of 20 was trudging through the desert. They were clad in torn and tattered gray robes. Their robes had not been cleaned for God knew how long. Their robes were drenched in sweat, releasing a disgusting stench, and they stuck to their wet bodies. Their lips were cracking, and their eyes draped down. Their fatigue was evident from the look on their faces. They were moving shakily, and it was as if they were going to collapse at any moment. The horses that they brought along also looked sick and skinny. The Samar Desert had once had an oasis. The country was rich, and its citizens lived happily. But after a war, the entire country had perished. The oasis had been destroyed by the battles and blended into the surrounding desert. The people walking in desert were the citizens of the country that had vanished. A legend of the old nation said that ruins of over 1,000,000 years old were hidden deep in the Samar Desert. Beneath the ruins, there was a hidden treasure that held the power to control the entire desert. In the wars that happened decades ago, the desert had undergone a series of abnormal changes. The sand behaved like water and transformed into a whirlpool. The whirlpool moved around the desert, as if it was being controlled by someone. The whirlpool then vanished after 7 days. The records of the eerie incident disappeared with the destruction of the country. Many citizens of the old nation believed that the treasure could revive their country, and they searched long and hard for it. The wanderers active along the border of the Samar Desert were also known as the pilgrims. That group of 20 was the last batch of pilgrims. The ruins of Felonia, the power of the magic, they are sure to exist, the eldest of the pilgrims mumbled to himself. A fleet of vehicles returned to the desert to defend the boundaries. Dorothy, nothing again this trip. Luo Qing, the chief of the Rose militants, questioned. This time we searched in sectors E4, E5 and D4. There are still no signs of Felonia, Dorothy replied with frustration. She was a strong black lady. Her face was disfigured by a long scar that looked like a centipede. Her strong muscular arms had tattoos that were hard to see due to her dark complexion. Rose Militant was a mercenary organization made up entirely of female members. They were active in the Samar Desert and had been searching for Felonia for years. There were 2 trainers in the organization. The other trainer, nicknamed Ghostly Fox, was a petite white lady and a brilliant assassin. In this search, our members came into contact with the Catonians. When Lee and Cecil died in battle, all the returning members of the militia suffered from injuries. Their bulletproof vests had many holes, and the ceramic tiles housed in the vests were also shattered. Luo Qing gave a cold glance and said, "Be more careful in the next search. The Catonians are funded by the Rothschild family, who have always wanted to wipe us out." All the military groups active in the Samar Desert had their sponsors. They all had the mission of finding Felonia. Therefore, battles between the different groups were very common. Most mercenary soldiers had at least 10 lives on their hands. They were all ruthless individuals. Han Xiao felt a shake in the plane. The huge force pressed his body hard on the seat. Gradually, that force pushing him disappeared. The plane has landed, the pilot shouted through the speakers. Han Xiao brought his briefcase down, and he could feel a wave of heat once he alighted from the plane. The landing site was a warehouse surrounded by barbed wire. There were many militias patrolling the area. It was the branch of the Fabian organization in the Samar Desert. The Fabian organization was a global arms-dealing organization that had branches everywhere for more convenient business dealings. Welcome to Samar Desert. Antonio descended from the plane. His white shirt was stretched tightly by his fat body. The chunk of meat could be seen clearly as if he was topless. Why did you follow? Haha. The chief in charge of the Samar branch was killed in a recent battle. Therefore, I am here to take care of some administrative matters. Also, it has been a long while since I traveled. Han Xiao nodded. He was not shy at all and asked, I need a map indicating the different military groups that are active. Also, can you lend me a desert jeep? I'll get someone to make the arrangements. Samar Desert spanned a large area. Even if he drove the jeep continuously without sleeping and followed the correct route, he would need at least 10 days to travel across the desert. Since it was hard to navigate through a desert, a radar was definitely required to accurately tell the direction. Furthermore, there were many military groups active in the region. Han Xiao felt confused as he could not understand what the different groups of forces were fighting for in the barren terrain. To find Felonia. What's that? Han Xiao was very curious. He did not have any recollection about that word. It was probably a hidden mission that had not been activated in his past life. Antonio yawned. I am equally clueless. Han Xiao realized that Antonio was trying to hide something from him. He raised his brows, collected his gear, and walked toward the jeep without saying another word. He was ready to check out the active areas of Rose Militant. Bon voyage. Antonio waved lazily at Han Xiao to bid farewell. Han Xiao drove the jeep into the desert, through an opening in the barbed wires. Through the information on the radar, Han Xiao managed to reach a location, quite a distance away from the area occupied by Rose Militant, where he could observe the activities of the member of the organization using a telescope. The campsite of Rose Militant was heavily guarded. It had concrete walls and barbed wire on the walls. The metal gate was the sole entrance and exit to the base. Within the base there was a tall sentry post. The sentry guard on the post observed the surroundings while the sentry post was also equipped with a huge searchlight that would be switched on at night. Han Xiao came to a conclusion. Unless he could burrow into the sand and dig a tunnel into the base, it was almost impossible for him to infiltrate the base. Furthermore, Rose Militant consisted only of women. They had big breasts and perky asses. Han Xiao had a perky ass, but he could not squeeze out any breasts. Even if he could disguise himself as a woman, it was highly likely that he would be discovered. The infiltration was bound to fail. Han Xiao glanced at the weapons on the sentry post. There were several grenade launchers and dozens of heavy machine guns in addition to the tough concrete walls encircling the base. An assault of the base was also bound to fail. It seems like the only way to achieve success for the mission is to lure the snake out. I need to employ traps in my upcoming battles. I need to create some new items, Han Xiao thought to himself as he left. He started his journey back to the Samar headquarters of the Fabian company. He wanted to ask Antonio if he could use the garage. There were still 7 remaining potential points. He raised basic electromagnetism to level 4 and basic spatial sensing to level 3, using a total of 4 points. Fusion. Success. Congratulations, you have discovered electromagnetic combat scanning visor. Oh, Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. The product from the fusion was not what he had anticipated. However, the visor was of great use to a sniper since it offered greater accuracy compared to using the thermoscope. The new visor enabled vision through the internal compartment of concrete walls. If it was mounted onto the scope, it would allow for more accurate shots through the concrete walls at the stipulated target. Let me try it again. This fusion will cost you 30,000 EXP. Fusion. Success. Congratulations, you have discovered electromagnetic pulse interference machine. That's the one. Han Xiao nodded. The EMP interference machine was a common blueprint. It was very likely to appear. And other than the EMP interference machine, there were a couple of other machinery blueprints that could meet his expectations. In fact, He had actually set aside sufficient EXP for a third fusion. However, he was no longer required to use the additional EXP and could save it for future tasks. The powers of the EMP interference machine were known far and wide. There was no shortage of vehicles available in the desert. However, since Han Xiao was a sniper, maintaining the distance between the target was of the utmost importance, and he needed to have some distractions for vehicles if they approached. He was still short of some highly destructive explosives, mines, and traps. He touched his chin, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He had a new idea. I guess I can try creating the items and skip the fusion process. Previously, the players could hardly utilize self-creation skills. However, they were able to absorb the knowledge from the other blueprints and fuse their knowledge and the information from the other blueprints together to create new ones. They were able to use their knowledge gained to add on to the details of their concepts. Through self-creation, they were able to skip the arduous research and development process of the new machinery, and they could even create powerful new machinery ahead of the expected progression. The core concept behind the highly explosive rounds was flammable gas. By compressing flammable gas into a container, its power would be escalated to an extent that was no lesser than the mines of shattering shards. Since he needed to create an explosive mine, he needed additional gunpowder and ball bearings. He started to consider the use of flammable gas. He decided to split the explosive round into different sections. The flammable gas became less reactive upon coming into contact with the atmospheric gases, and they were sealed up. There was a switch in the round that also acted as a timer. Once the time was up, the switch would click, and as the flammable gases came into contact with the gunpowder, an explosion would be triggered. Since he was going to utilize his prototyping skills, Han Xiao felt that it was a good opportunity to increase the power of his product by equipping it with additional effects. Therefore, he decided to incorporate the theory behind the Haim bullet into his new creation. Han Xiao quickly finalized the blueprint in his mind and started crafting the new equipment with his hands. A prototype was required to be tested in order to determine whether the new creation was a success or not. Most players employed the creation process. They merely set the blueprint and selected the materials and tools required. They did not participate in the manufacturing process, and the success of the creation depended a lot on luck. However, Han Xiao was involved in every phase of the production process, including the hands-on manufacturing. Hence, he was able to fine-tune the steps in each stage of the production, and that greatly increased the success rate of his creation. After a while, a circular mine with a 30mm diameter emerged from Han Xiao's production. He operated the interface and did an automatic scan to determine if his creation was successful. Scanning to determine success of product. Failure. It failed. Han Xiao raised his brows and frowned. The reason behind the failure had to be due to the fact that the mechanical components were unable to attain the projected effects, or there were some obvious loopholes. He found a spot to test out the power of his new creation, and he discovered that the ignition process involving the highly flammable gas, gunpowder, and the poisonous gas was awry. Although an explosion still took place, the damage caused was far below what was projected, and modifications were required. The gases were very hard to control. A slight mistake meant that the entire process had to be repeated and modifications of the mechanical parts had to be made. The weapons testing area of the Fabian organization's camp was completed charred, and venomous gases were everywhere. Han Xiao had to vacate the ground, else he would suffer continuous deductions of his HP. Finally, after 13 failures, an angelic line emerged on the interface. Success! You have successfully created a new prototype blueprint. A new explosives blueprint emerged in his mind, and the interface recorded all the theories behind the machinery. After witnessing the effects of this new weapon, Han Xiao whispered, "It's too conventional to call the explosive the highly flammable, poisonous, delayed explosion mine. I shall call the mine flaming poison. The naming is successful. You have gained the blueprint of the new creation, flaming poison mine." After the newly created blueprint was recognized by the interface, the usage of the explosive became a skill, and EXP could be utilized to increase the level of the explosive. Furthermore, The various requirements to create the explosive were also recorded on the interface, and by referring to the interface during the creation process, the manufacturing of the explosive could take place at a faster rate. Han Zhao's eyes lit up brightly. Indeed, just as I expected, the self-creation blueprints can meet my needs for adaptable weapons during battle situations, and there is a huge potential in this area that has yet to be unraveled. The next step will be to create a sufficient inventory of explosives. Night soon fell. Han Xiao drove his jeep into an empty and spacious sector. He then arranged rows of fireworks on the ground and put them on delayed ignition. After that, he prepared the flaming venoms and EMP interference machine along the path that Rose Militant had to take in order to reach the specified sector. How did Han Xiao predict the route that Rose Militant would take? It was based on the shortest distance between the 2 points. Obviously, one could not eliminate the possibility that the enemy would take a longer path instead of the predicted one. However, it was not much of a worry, as there was always another opportunity to ambush the enemy. The EMP interference machine was a circular piece of equipment with a base. Han Xiao had created a portable version with a height of merely 1 meter and a radiation radius of 300 meters that released high-frequency wave signals. The machine could interfere with the abilities of other precision electronics, such as communication devices, remotely controlled electronics, and search radars. It was especially effective against vehicles, and could paralyze their communications, signal receptors, controllers, and even their movements. Although Han Xiao did not expect the vehicles operated by the Rose militants to be equipped with anti-interference machines, he adjusted the interference machinery to a frequency that had the highest likelihood for success. As long as there was a slight opening in the vehicle that was not equipped with anti-interference metal, the vehicle would succumb to the effects of the interference. The drawback of such a method was that it was very draining on the battery of the machine. However, it was not much of an issue as the machine was not required to release constant interference. As long as there was one successful penetration, the vehicle would be paralyzed. After setting up the trap, Han Xiao parked his jeep at a sand dune that was around 400 meters away from the ambush. He then silently lay prone on ground and looked through his scope like a patient hunter waiting for his kill. At night, the temperature of the desert plunged, and the cold gusts of wind blew the sand into the air. Han Xiao was wearing a windbreaker and had thick leather gloves on his hands to prevent the freezing cold from immobilizing his hands, and thus his accuracy. Boom! The fireworks shot up into the sky in the marked-out sector. The fireworks were especially glaring in the dark of the night. They could be seen clearly from even tens of kilometers away. There's a problem. In the base of the Rose militants, the sentry guard saw the booming fireworks in the sky and immediately reported the situation to Luo Qing. Dorothy, take your troops and check out the situations. Be careful of the other militias around, and request for reinforcements immediately if you guys engage enemies, Luo Qing quickly ordered. Dorothy nodded. She selected 20 troops. They suited up, equipping themselves with a plethora of magazine cartridges and grenades. They then rode out in 4 desert jeeps. In the Catonian base camp, Kutan, who was the chief, also saw the fireworks and ordered his men. Bring your troops and check out the situation. A fight is likely to take place. A couple of the armed jeeps drove out of the Kutan base camp into the wild. The same scene also played out in a couple of other militant camps. The jeeps of Rose Militant were speeding through the desert. The rotating tires threw the sand into the air, and a long dragon of dust trailed behind the vehicles. Dorothy, is this the appearance of Felonia? A female trooper asked Dorothy. Dorothy had a ferocious look. When she squeezed her lips, she looked like a black tigress that devoured anything in her way. She replied coldly, if Felonia could be discovered so easily, I wouldn't have wasted 2 years here. This is probably some smokescreen created by others. Everyone stay on high alert. This is probably another trap the Catonians planted. Once Dorothy's sentence ended, an eerie sound of electricity could be heard in the air. Dorothy and 5 other troops could sense that there was a special wave that originated from somewhere not far away. Simultaneously, all the meters on the cars cracked, and the 4 jeeps instantly lost control and collided into one another like drunkards. No matter how much the drivers stepped on the pedals, the jeeps were still out of their control. Enemy ambush. Dorothy was shocked and started to scan the surroundings alertly. What was the cause of the paralysis of the vehicles? Could it have been an EMP? The troops searched around, and they could only see the yellowish sand in the darkness. There was nothing strange. The desert was spacious, and stars of the galaxy could also be seen in the night sky. The cold wind of the night howled. The troops could feel the goosebumps on their arms. It was as if they were being choked by a gigantic hand and could hardly breathe. Boom! The Rose militants staggered toward the direction that the bullets originated from. The venomous gas had infiltrated their bodies, and they were clearly poisoned. Only Dorothy, who had the physical attributes of a pugilist, was able to withstand the poison. She led the troops in the charge. Xiao calmly switched to the cartridge with the spindle-shaped penetration bullets. He fired the sniper, and the gunshots sounded as if they followed a steady tempo. Shot by shot, he wiped out the militants one by one. The bulletproof vests were unable to withstand the power of the penetration bullets. Coupled with Xiao's personal attribute, a shot fired by Xiao could deal a theoretical damage of around 130 damage points. Moreover, the normal troops ranged from level 5 to level 8. They possessed around 150 points of HP. Therefore, a single shot was enough to kill them with the damage dealt by the poison and flames. A second shot was not even needed to kill the troops. The efficiency of wiping out the enemy was especially high. Xiao deliberately made Dorothy the sole survivor of his attacks. Firstly, he killed all of Dorothy's assistants, and he was only left with the strongest of them all, Dorothy, to fight. After Xiao killed the last of the ordinary militants, Dorothy finally got close to him. She raised her modified machine gun and started firing hysterically at him. Xiao ducked, and the bullets struck the sand dunes, spraying sand into the air. Dorothy was running and firing her weapon ferociously at the same time. She finally came before Xiao after she exhausted the bullets of her magazine. She appeared to be a brutal killer. The sniper was bound to be dead if a pugilist managed to get close to the sniper. Dorothy could not wait to smash Xiao's skull into pieces, just as she had done to a couple of her other enemies. Hunting tiger axe. Dorothy wielded her axe and slashed it at Xiao's head. The sound of the axe slicing the wind could be heard. She was confident that her strike was powerful enough to wreck Xiao's brain into pieces. Xiao dodged the strike and slid backward 3 steps like a mudskipper. Dorothy missed her strike. Strafe. Like a phantom, Xiao drew the berserk eagles from his waist. The continuous firing by Xiao instantly led to countless penetration bullets piercing Dorothy's body. Dorothy shrieked in pain. However, her eyes revealed a tinge of arrogance. She took out a shotgun from her back and fired at Xiao. Shotgun bullets are the deadliest close range. It is a sure kill. You're a dead man. Dorothy expected Xiao to be dead, but the next moment astonished her. The scale-like armor covered Xiao's upper body, and the bullets from the shotgun struck the hard surface of the armor, resulting in sparks. With his current skills, Xiao was able to create a magnetically controlled retractable armor that covered his entire upper body. I have armor, you fool. Xiao then fired all the bullets in his magazine at Dorothy's body. A pugilist that reached Pan Kuang's level was able to withstand the penetration by the bullets only if he focused hard. Compared to Pan Kuang, Dorothy was much weaker, and it was impossible for her to withstand the penetration by the high-caliber bullets. Blood spurted out from her mouth, and her bloodshot eyes stared hard at Xiao. She was mumbling, as if she wanted to say something. Boom! Xiao blasted Dorothy's head with his pistol. You killed Dorothy. LV-25. You gained 7,500 EXP. In the earlier stages, snipers possessed strong long-range combat power, and they were able to conveniently strike their targets from afar. However, snipers were trained solely by the Union. This was because of the fact that it was too expensive to train snipers. Even the lousiest sniper would require at least $10,000 of investment. Sniper bullets were expensive. Every shot fried was like to money being used up. Furthermore, ordinary snipers did not possess the magnetically controlled retractable armor. Therefore, They were easily killed when their enemies moved up close to them. Han Xiao searched Dorothy's body and discovered that her gun was modified. From the modifications, it seemed like Rose Militant had a skillful mechanic. After wiping out this group of enemies, Han Xiao had gained 10,000 EXP. The endless flames from the flaming poison mines would soon attract more enemies. Han Xiao retrieved the EMP interference machine and returned to his jeep, quickly leaving the site. A while after Han Xiao left, a group of Kutan troops arrive at the scene. They were shocked by the sight before their eyes. They are from Rose Militant, who ambushed them. The Kutan troops were just about to check out the scene when the reinforcements led by Luo Qing also arrived. They saw their comrades lying dead on the ground, and the Kutan troops standing over their bodies. Fire! The two groups had been in conflict for quite a while. Upon seeing their enemies, Rose Militant was instantly angered, and they started firing. Any form of explanation to prevent the fight was futile. Luo Qing ordered the attack without hesitation. The Kudan troops retaliated upon realizing the situation they were about to face. Instantly, a fierce battle took place, and the gunshots and explosions lit up the night sky. Other militias also arrived at the scene. Upon seeing the ongoing battle between the Kudan troops and the Rose Militants, they wanted a piece of the cake and joined in the fight. It turned into a complete chaos. Even more militias that had bases further away from the site arrived, and they joined in the fun and started stirring more chaos, before even finding out the reason behind the fight. The fight went for almost half of the night. All the respective militias suffered damage. They retreated to their bases and started to count their losses. The last few militias that arrived at the scene did not even know why they had been fighting. The Rose Militants brought back 20 bodies of their dead comrades. These bodies had grievous wounds created by the bullets of a sniper. Looks like Dorothy and the others were not ambushed by the Catonians. They were killed by a sniper, Ghostly Fox said. Luo Qing's face sank as she started thinking hard about the culprit behind the attack. Their enemies were all from the Samar Desert, and even if there was conflict, it was more likely to be a direct battle rather than an ambush. She immediately thought of the incident that had happened 2 years back. When the Rothschild family first put a bounty on their heads, many lone assassins had taken up the challenge and tried to kill them. Another bounty hunter? Luo Qing frowned. Rose Militant had not been approached by assassins for almost a year. Perhaps after a year, some rash youngster had forgotten about the painful lesson the Rose Militants had taught the assassins. Dorothy had suffered a painful death. She was murdered at a close range. This indicated that the sniper possessed some close combat abilities. A petite woman approached. She was wearing an oil-stained coat and said, "I found the killer's vehicle tax." He headed toward the southeast. There are 3 distinct camps based there, and the nearest one belongs to the Fabian organization. Good job, Suli. Suli was the mechanic of the Rose Militants, and she was in charge of maintaining and modifying the guns, vehicles, and defensive gear. I found some shards of the exploded mines at the site, and I presume the incident was a well-planned ambush. The outer shells of the mine belonged to the Fabian organization. It is highly likely that the killer is residing in the camp of the Fabian organization. I tried to piece back the mine that was used, and it seems like a new type of explosive. The explosion involved the use of several gases. Luo Qing squinted. They had met a tough foe this time, but she was determined to take revenge. She made an encrypted phone call to their secret sponsor. Mr. Sebastian, a team of 20 of our troops were hunted down by an unknown assassin. An old raspy voice emerged from the other side of the line. I will send someone to handle it. Every time an assassin emerged, the sponsor behind the Rose Militants would send out other professional assassins to punish the culprit. That was the reason Rose Militant had managed to wipe out so many assassins in the Samar Desert. A helicopter landed on the helipad within the compound of the base camp of Rose Militant. 3 cold-looking men alighted from the helicopter. They seemed to possess an air of mystery that prevented others from wanting to go near them. Furthermore, they looked almost the same, like they were made from the same mold. Code 3, Code 5, and Code 9 were all the assassins trained in the same training camp. How's the situation? Code 3, who was the captain of the team, asked directly. Luo Qing gave him a brief of the events that had occurred. Code 3 squinted and said, "The enemy is a sniper, and his ambush on your men was to scout on your abilities. He wanted to lure all of you out. The enemy possesses detailed information about you guys, and based on the latest information provided, the enemy is probably residing in the camp of the Fabian organization. However, the Fabian organization is not a party you want to mess with. We are unable to conduct assassinations in their territory. What are you guys planning to do then?" Luo Qing asked. "You guys are the target of the killer. Therefore, we are going to use you as bait to lure him out. After that, the three of us will ambush him and secure the kill. Ghostly Fox, you will be responsible for taking our teams out over the upcoming few days," Luo Qing ordered. Ghostly Fox nodded. In the Fabian organization's campsite, Han Xiao was scratching the unshaven stubble on his chin in his room. He was still puzzled. It seems like Rose Militant can no longer fight as well as they did in the past. The combat skills of Dorothy made him feel strange. If that was what Rose Militant was capable of, there was no reason the bounty had yet to be collected. Once again, the suspicion in Han Xiao was activated, and he felt like he was missing some critical information. He then went to find Antonio to clear his queries. Han Xiao knocked on the door of Antonio's office and looked into the room from the tiny available gap. Antonio was looking through files on his study table. "What are you here for?" Antonio laughed. Han Xiao sat in front of Antonio and faced him directly. Han Xiao then asked, "I want to know more about the different militias active in the Samar Desert. I passed you the report previously. You can find all strengths and territories of these militias on it. I want something not on the report." Han Xiao raised his brows and said, "You know what I mean." Antonio lit a cigar and laughed. "I guess you realized it. All these militias are merely tools used by the rich families who act as their funders. They sponsor these militants to help them search for Felonia. If these backers are not wiped out, there will only be endless streams of militants pouring into the desert. The troops of Kutan are sponsored by the Rothschild family, who put up your bounty. Haha. Don't be too surprised. The bounties for the Rose militants are all public." Han Xiao was not surprised. If that was the case, in order for him to complete his mission, he had to wipe out all of Rose militant, especially their chief Luo Qing. Antonio took a puff and said calmly, "Rose militant is funded by the Ordofina organization. The organization controls various political lobbying groups. It also manages secret facilities to train mercenaries and assassins. It is headquartered in the Western continent, which is relatively less powerful in the Southern continent. However, it is definitely not a small organization to be trifled with." Han Xiao had a sudden realization. No wonder all the darknet assassins sent to kill the militants did not return. Rose Militant had a powerful supporter that provided them with reinforcements. What's so special about Felonia? How can it draw the attention of so many different forces? Han Xiao felt that the mystery of Felonia had something to do with the rewards of his assassination mission. Since a large number of reinforcements was expected to arrive, Han Xiao had to plan out his next steps carefully. At first, Han Xiao had two ideas in mind. The first was to wait for the target to arrive at his doorstep, and the second was to lure the enemies out of their camp. Both methods required Rose Militant to leave their base. The reinforcements sent by the enemies were bound to work out the tactics he was going to employ. Therefore, it was highly likely that they had ordered the Rose Militants to move out of their base to lure Han Xiao out and eventually ambush him. What shall I do? Perhaps take an unexpected path? Han Xiao massaged his temples as he contemplated his options. What if he set up a trap somewhere then acted as if he did not know about the enemy ambush? Once contacted, Han Xiao would lure the enemies into his trap and turn the situation around to his advantage. I will need more weapons. Ghostly Fox took her team out for their third patrol. They were wandering aimlessly in the desert. She felt a tinge of frustration and asked through the communication line, "Why is the assassin not appearing? Is he afraid or what?" From the other side of the line, Code 3 replied, "Assassins are meticulous individuals. The successful ambush means that he will wait to observe your movements before making the next move." It was night again. Recently, Han Xiao had often been busy at night. He hauled the new equipment that he had created into the jeep before he drove out of the camp to the site where he would set up his tap. The jeep moved out of the gates of the camp. The light emitted by the jeep dimmed as the vehicle moved deeper into the desert. At the same time, there was a telescope that could be seen far away from the scene. On the sand dune a kilometer away, Code 9, who was clad in yellow cloth, was observing the movement of the jeep with his telescope. He broke into a cold grin. The target has left the camp. He is heading north. I suppose he wants to set up his trap. He has probably discovered our existence and wants to employ reverse psychology to lure us into his trap instead. Since they knew that Han Xiao was hiding in Fabian Organization's camp, they were naturally spying on him. The enemy is pretty amateur. Code 3 looked confident. He expected the upcoming mission to be an easy one, since everything was under their control. At dawn, Han Xiao backed to the base and went to look for Antonio. You want me to help you drive? Antonio looked shocked. Yes, I need you to drive since my hands will be tied up with firing the shots. Wait, this is your mission. How does it concern me? Why must I help you? Antonio was puzzled. It is rare for you venture out. So how can you just stay here and do nothing? Come out with me and experience the beauty of nature. Antonio pointed to the barren desert and asked, what nature is there to see here? This is all just on the surface. Maybe we will see a magnificent mirage. Maybe there will be hidden mountains and rivers. The desert is very big. I am sure these sights can be discovered if you explore the area with a devout heart. I don't think we are close enough to travel together, Antonio replied in an awkward manner. Then give me a chance to be friends with you. Han Xiao laughed out loud. Did anyone ever tell you that you are very thick-skinned? Han Xiao touched his face mask. He was obviously thick-skinned. His mask alone was 2 layers thick. Although Antonio looked obese, Han Xiao could sense the immense combat power that he possessed. Han Xiao had selected Antonio to be his driver, as he knew that Antonio would be unlikely to commit any screw-ups or die so easily. If it was an ordinary driver, the driver would die almost instantly upon contact with the enemy, and he would be left to fend for himself. Antonio thought for a moment and said, if you want me to participate in the mission, I want a share of your earnings. How about 5%? No way. That's too little. Antonio shook his head. Don't argue with me. You are just going with me to drive the vehicle. 5% is already a generous offer. If we meet any enemies, the driver will surely be the first target. At least 20%. Han Xiao widened his eyes in disbelief. Why don't you just go and rob someone? That's precisely what I'm doing now. There was a hint of cheekiness in Antonio's tiny eyes. After arguing for quite some time, Han Xiao finally decided to appease Antonio with $20,000. Paying Antonio with hard cash was more reliable than just making a verbal contract. The collaboration between the two became an employment contract. $20,000 for a one-time driver was no doubt an extravagant spend. Antonio squeezed his fat body into the driver's seat, while Han Xiao sat at the back of the jeep. He then handed the radar coordinates to Antonio and briefed him on the plan. Antonio chuckled after he heard the plan. Interesting. It was late in the morning. The sun was scorching, and mirages started forming under the intense heat of the desert. The team that Ghostly Fox was leading only operated 2 jeeps. They were wandering around the desert and searching the surroundings. A jeep is approaching, a trooper exclaimed. An armored jeep appeared at the sand dune not far from their position. The jeep was traveling in parallel to their jeeps. It was the jeep with Han Xiao and Antonio. Enemy is approaching. Ghostly Fox was delighted. An eerie voice sounded from the communication device. The voice was cold and had the vibes of a killer. The prey is finally in the trap. Han Xiao stuck his rifle barrel out of the car window. A high-explosive bullet spun out of the chamber and reached accurately on one of Rose Militant's jeeps. The bullet exploded, engulfing the car in massive flames. However, all these desert jeeps had a specially made protective exterior that offered protection against the high heat. The destruction caused by the high-explosive bullet was limited. Han Xiao assessed the situation before he decisively changed to the penetration bullets and fired them at the bulletproof windows of those vehicles, causing numerous cracks. Surrounded, Ghostly Fox's team turned around immediately, and 2 other vehicles followed to encircle the place. Where is the ambush? Since Han Xiao was undeterred by the dangers ahead, he was naturally vigilant about his situation. All of a sudden, he covered his face with his magnetic armor, and it deflected a sniper round that was aimed at his forehead. He raised his eyes and saw a new enemy jeep charging toward him from the side. On the back of the vehicle, a foreign enemy was operating a sniper rifle. A person who could fire such an accurate round on a fast-moving vehicle had the 30% chance of being a mechanic or a 60% chance of being a sniper-type assassin. The last 10% accounted for the possibility of it being sheer luck. The shot had come from Code 3. He was slightly surprised by the fact that he did not succeed. The target has a special protective method. Could be an Esper power or machinery, he uttered in a low voice. Han Xiao believed that there were more to this ambush. He slapped on the back of the front chair and said, "Go faster, don't slow down. Drive to our destination." Antonio skillfully changed gear and stomped on the accelerator. The car drifted before it changed direction and sped to escape. All of a sudden, another jeep, as if it had been waiting in place for days, appeared right in the direction of their new escape route. This time, it was driven by Code 5. He fired his bazooka at them. The anti-tank warhead, driven by the flaming rocket propeller, approached them rapidly. Antonio's face slightly paled, and he immediately turned the steering wheel forcefully to make a sharp turn. The rocket brushed past the rear end of the car and landed on the sandy ground. A loud blast was heard, and sand was flying all over the air. The shockwave smashed onto the back of the vehicle, tilting it 30 degrees upward before it fell hard onto the ground. Han Xiao, who was sitting on the back seats, was bumped up and down heavily. His butt was in great pain as a result. They dodged it. Code 3 squinted and said, "Code 9 is waiting for them in front on Thorns." Thorns was an armored battle vehicle modified by Su Li. It had extremely strong firepower, massive horsepower, and an ultra-thick armored exterior. It was the perfect fusion of a tank's attack and defense capability, and a jeep's mobility. Last night, Code 9 had discovered Han Xiao's tracks, and they had set up the ambush with the 3 assassins. Code 9 was their final insurance. He drove Thorns in the direction that Han Xiao placed his trap. They had even discovered the rough coordinates of the trap, so it was impossible for them to fall into it. They then purposefully waited in the direction of Han Xiao's escape to dash the little hope he had when he so desperately tried to escape. "He is already dead," Code 3 whispered. The battle caused many explosions on the road. Countless bullets and rockets were chasing Han Xiao's vehicle wantonly. Han Xiao fired back as many times as he could, barely slowing the 4 jeeps' pursuit. The Red Falcon sniper rifle complemented the powerful spindle bullet, causing a substantial threat to the Rose militant. But as his vehicle was now scrambling to escape from the scene, coupled with Code 3 and Code 5's suppression, his shooting accuracy was undermined to a great extent. A distinct engine sound thundered on the battlefield, like a tiger roaring in rage. Han Xiao felt his heart tighten, and he quickly looked forward. A modified battle jeep was blocking their way. Its armored exterior, thick and bulky, was covered with sharp spikes like a hedgehog. Different kinds of large-caliber barrels were sticking out from the sides of the vehicle. Based on the sizes of the barrels, they were grenade launchers and small missile launchers. On the roof, there was a 4-barreled rotating Gatling machine gun. Oh wait, it must be a Gatling-type cannon with that kind of caliber, powerful enough to be used on air fleets. Thorns. The battle jeep was right in front of their final path, circling them with the other 4 cars. They had no way to escape. "We definitely cannot withstand the firepower from that damn thing." Antonio had a grievous look. They were blocked by the enemies from all sides and surrounded. They were on the brink of death. "Drive south. You don't have to worry about the firepower from that vehicle. I will handle it," Han Xiao said solemnly. There was only Code 3, armed with a sniper rifle, on the southern path. He was the lowest threat. Antonio had no choice but to have faith in Han Xiao, and he quickly turned the steering wheel to run Code 3 down. Too late. Code 9's expression was icy cold, and he was about to fire the cannon on Thorns to blow Han Xiao's jeep up in the air. Suddenly, Han Xiao turned around and fired a shot in his direction. The round hit the glass window and instantly flashed a blazing light. Code 9's eyes were blinded by the light and started tearing. He shut his eyes in the moment of pain. Flash bullet. A massive volume of flames and smoke was coming out of the Gatling cannon on Thorns, but it was fired in the wrong direction. The explosive rounds landed more than 10 meters away from Han Zhao's jeep. Crap! How did Code 9 flounder that shot? Code 3 was dumbfounded, and he quickly ordered the driver to block Han Zhao's vehicle. Antonio was fearless. He stomped on the accelerator, and the vehicle collided with the side of Code 3's jeep front unyieldingly. Both vehicles vibrated violently. However, Antonio chose an excellent angle of collision. He was able to force a path out, creating an opening for them to escape the encirclement. Pursue them. As they had fallen short of success at the last moment, Code 3 was infuriated. However, as he reassessed the situation, his mood eased up again. They still had the upper hand in the current situation, so he had nothing to worry about. Although Han Xiao was running away frantically from the ambush that they had laid, they would soon catch up with him and blow his vehicle up with Thorn's firepower and horsepower. Han Xiao looked behind the vehicle through the glass window. The Rose militant motorcade was chasing them relentlessly. They were merely 200 meters apart, and both parties were driving more than 100 miles an hour. Additionally, Thorns was firing non-stop, erupting waves and waves of sand behind his car. The aftereffect of the flash bullet was still being felt by Code 9. His eyes were red and sore, and his vision was blurred. As a result, his shots had zero. Han Xiao was not at all flustered. He peeked at his coordinates on the radar and said with great composure, "Antonio, start the nitro boost in 48 seconds. 47:30, 16:321. When the moment arrived, Antonio opened a small cover beside the gearshift, which exposed the button for the nitro boost. He then pressed hard on the button. Blue flames were gushing out of the exhaust pipe at the back of the Jeep, and its speed soared, pulling their distance apart rapidly. The resultant force pushed the two in the vehicle into the back of their seat, restricting their movement. A futile struggle. Code 3 thought nothing of it. He believed that the nitro boost would run out sooner or later. It was just a last-ditch effort to extend their lives. They would eventually be caught up by Thorns and be blown up. The nitro boost was exhausted when the distance between the two parties extended to 400 meters. They are slowing down. Code 5 loaded a new rocket, and he stood up through the roof window and aimed at Han Zhao's Jeep from a distance. All of a sudden, his car braked at once. The sudden momentum threw Code 5 into the back seat. What the hell? Code 5 was shouting when he saw the driver changing gears frantically. However, the vehicle was not responding at all. His heart sank, and he turned around and looked out the window. All their Jeeps had stopped moving, including Thorns. They had all lost their driving power. All the cars are paralyzed. What is happening? Everyone from Rose Militant was frightened. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered now that they had lost control of their vehicles. Han Zhao's Jeep parked a distance away. Ghostly Fox wanted to contact the base for backup only to realize that their communication devices were malfunctioning. "This is the effect of EMP," she screamed. Ghostly Fox felt a chill down her spine as she recalled how Dorothy had died. "Run!" The next moment, a high-explosive sniper round flew over from a distance, targeting an area beneath Code 3's feet. Then, the landmines buried underneath the ground exploded. This time, the explosives included not just the toxic explosive mines, but also the good-quality ordinary landmines from Fabian Company's warehouse. The blaring sound of the blast was heard non-stop. Glaring flames shot up into the air, creating a dazzling mixture of orange, red and white in Han Zhao's eyes. Flames and explosions engulfed the whole 100-meter radius of Rose Militant. There was not a single figure in sight. Han Xiao lifted his sniper rifle on his shoulder and gave an evil chuckle. "Are you surprised? Are you shocked?" Antonio alighted from his vehicle and stood beside Han Xiao as he watched the explosion. He lit a cigar and took a puff before he chuckled heartily. "It has been a while since I last saw such beautiful scenery. I almost forgot what an explosion looks like after sitting in the office for so long. Go ahead and enjoy the scenery." Han Xiao stretched his neck to relieve some of the fatigue as a result of the pursuit. The flames eventually diminished, Antonio and Han Xiao cautiously approached the scene of explosion. A pungent stench, created by the mixture of smells from burning bodies and toxic gas, blew toward them. Crap. I forgot that there is some toxic gas remaining. Han Xiao was dumbfounded as he watched his HP drop on the interface. He had no choice but to retreat the place, and he could only go back to sweep the battlefield after the toxic gas dispersed. Ugh! A faint moan was heard on the battlefield. It came from Code 3, who was already half dead. His 4 limbs had been shattered in the explosion, and his body was covered in red and dark burn marks. He raised his head laboriously and leveled Han Xiao a deadly gaze. You. Why? Han Xiao gave him a glance and used his berserk eagle to silence him before he could even finish his sentence. Good guys could win battles with their words, and bad guys would always lose and die because they talked too much. There were countless similar lessons in the past. Han Xiao had wanted to try and talk to Code 3, but he believed that he did not belong to the good guy category, so he had killed Code 3 without saying a word. This kill has given me quite a lot of EXP. Code 3. What kind of lousy name is that? Han Xiao looked at his interface while insulting the enemy's name. Hold on. There seems to be an enemy missing from my kill history. Han Xiao's eyes flashed and immediately surveyed his surroundings. He suddenly fired at the ground 20 meters away. Whoosh! A shadow jumped out from beneath the sand, ghostly fox. She dashed rapidly and stabbed her dagger swiftly toward the nearest person, Antonio. Her pugilist training had taught her simple ground tunneling techniques. She had escaped the devastating explosion by tunneling into the sand the instant before the explosion. She had intended to continue hiding until all the enemies were gone. But since she had been spotted by Han Xiao, she had to fight for her life. Sunlight was reflected off the surface of the dagger, emitting an icy glare. Antonio's eyes narrowed, and he slammed his massive arms rapidly toward Ghostly Fox. His palms were almost as large as those of bears. Ghostly Fox ducked as her petite build allowed her to do so easily. She circled to the back of Antonio and stabbed her dagger toward his heart. Suddenly, a dark shadow zoomed in before her eyes, and a bear-like palm followed and grabbed her head. The palm was so large that it almost wrapped around her entire skull. Antonio threw her more than 10 meters away, as if he was shot putting. The sheer amount of force created wave-like tracks around her on the ground. She was badly injured from the throw. However, she gritted her teeth hard and dived toward Antonio again. With Han Xiao watching on the side, she would be sniped down if she attempted to run away. She had no choice but to continue the fight. Pum, pum, pum. Antonio was about to strike back when Han Xiao fired a few rounds with his double pistols, which turned her into a sieve. You killed Ghostly Fox, LV-29. You have gained 9,400 EXP. Her level was quite high. Why was she so weak? Han Xiao looked at the battle info and realized the reason. Ghostly Fox's main job was only LV.8, and the rest of her levels were in her secondary jobs, which were mostly useless. You should have given me the opportunity to exercise my rusty body, Antonio groused. The body is still warm. You can use it for some exercise. Han Xiao nonchalantly picked his nose. You really are a jerk. Once the toxic gas dispersed, Han Xiao stepped into the explosion site to retrieve his EMP disruptor. Han Xiao had been unaware that Code 3 knew his whereabouts, but he was used to making multiple plans at once. He had planted not just 1 but 4 traps that night, each on a different position of the road that he was circling. Unless the enemy did not pursue him, they would have fallen into at least one of the traps. As long as you dare chase me, I will eventually kill you. After collecting his EMP disruptor, Han Xiao started scavenging loot from the bodies. He found a substantial number of firearms and ammunition, which could be sold for a handsome amount of money. However, his greatest loot was the modified battle vehicle Thorns. He would be able to use it after he fixed its internal electronic components. Next, it is time to borrow some help. Ghostly Fox lost contact. They had 3 assassins ambushing and better intelligence, yet they fell into the enemy's trap. Lua was heavy-hearted. She had just lost 2 teams, and the modified battle vehicle Thorns. Now the base was void of any defense, which was another huge loss. She contacted her secret sponsor again, and explained the situation. You guys retreat first. the person said slowly over the phone. Understood. After hanging up the phone, Luo immediately organized her troops to load all the valuable assets onto vehicles in preparation of discarding the base and retreating temporarily. It was not the first time Rose Militant had faced a crisis of this magnitude. All they needed to do was seek shelter somewhere else for a few days before their secret sponsor sent down more personnel. They would gain a firm foothold again by then. However, only half of the assets were loaded up when a blaring alarm was heard all over the base. Enemy attack. The sentry was shouting as loud as she could. Luo was astounded. She quickly climbed up the sentry post and looked far ahead. And that was when he saw a wave of sand inching closer. It was a motorcade of the Kutans approaching menacingly. Damn it! They are here too soon. Rose Militant had suffered great losses, so they were bound to fall prey to other powerful factions at this opportune time. And the Kutans were the prime candidate. The primary purpose of discarding the base was to avoid the hostility from other factions. However, the Kutans came too quickly. Someone must have had tipped them off. Luo was enraged. Those Catonian mercenaries were attacking the base from the front line. If they were to brashly attempt to escape with their vehicles, it would surely become a battle in pursuit, which would make it all the more dangerous for them. They were in a dilemma. Commander, what should we do now? Let's strike back. Strike them hard, Luo said unyieldingly. The militants dropped the supplies in their hand and quickly got back into their defense positions. They began bombarding the Catonian motorcade with machine guns and grenade launchers. However, the mercenaries were undeterred and struck back. One could only see rounds flying back and forth between the two sides, forming a curtain of death. Countless cartridges fell into the yellow sand, and the grenades left numerous darkened sand craters on the ground, making the place resemble the surface of the moon. Rose Militant had excellent defenses in the base. They shouldered the attack, even with insufficient manpower. Behind the four walls of the base, Luo was seen commanding the militants tirelessly. Su Li walked over and whispered into her ears, "Due to insufficient manpower, 1/4 of our defense system is unmanned. Furthermore, as we are walled inside the base, we will face serious danger if other factions decide to butt in." As soon as she finished her sentence, a roaring engine sound was heard from a distance. Luo and Su Li's hearts both jolted. They recognized that distinct engine hum. On the other side of the battlefield, Xiao was driving the ferocious Thorns. The car jumped down from the sandhill like a fearsome tiger, drawing a parabolic path on the sky. The repaired exterior reflected a glaring beam of sunlight, and the vehicle's tires sped furiously. The vehicle smashed onto the ground, splashing heaps of sand to the side, before it charged furious toward the base. It was unstoppable. Don't the Thorns only belong to Rose Militant? Kutan's eyes narrowed, and he quickly ordered his subordinates to pull back their positions. He thought that the Thorns operator was from the enemy side, and he was well aware of the firepower of the vehicle. Thus, he wanted to prepare his defense before the enemy was able to destroy them from their flanks. He did not know that Rose Militant was even more anxious than him. They were even clearer about the real firing capability of Thorns. "Quickly stop him. We cannot let Thorns near the base," Su Li screamed. Luo was wailing in her heart. Thorns used to be their trump card, and now, it had been taken, and was being used against them. What a despicable act. It was like having your girl snatched by another guy, and he still dared to bring your girl, ex-girlfriend, to show off in front of you. How could anyone endure such humiliation? Luo could never tolerate such an act. She hated the killer so much that she wished that she could grind him into sand. All the machine guns and grenade launchers in the base were immediately adjusted to face the fast-approaching Thorns. Upon seeing their reaction, Kutan knew that Thorns was an ally right away. He then shouted, "All vehicles on the flank, make a path for the unexpected guest." The Catonian motorcade changed its formation, emptying a path on its flank that led directly to the front gate of the base, which allowed Thorns to conveniently charge forward. Xiao was alone in Thorns. After they killed Ghostly Fox's team, they had gone back and repaired Thorns at the Fabian base. This time he came alone. Other factions in the Samar Desert would not allow such a great opportunity to pass. The main fighting force of Rose Militant had been wiped out. Han Xiao passed this piece of information to them. It gave him the ability to fish in the troubled waters. The grenade launchers, heavy machine guns, and small-scale missile launchers had to be controlled manually, using the aiming system beside the speedometer. An automated firepower control system was not installed in the vehicle. There were many incoming rounds. Han Xiao managed to escape some, and the armored exterior absorbed the impact of the rest. He then aimed one of the cannons at the wall of the base and fired. As the vehicle vibrated violently, a few small-scale missiles and grenade explosives blasted promptly on the wall, triggering a glaring flame. The cannon exploded into 1,000 pieces, lingering in the air. Inside the base, Luo was livid. She had a hunch that they would not be able to guard the base. She called in Su Li and gave her an orderly softly. "We will give up the base and evacuate using the secret passageway. Bring 5 people with us." Su Li nodded her head, agreeing with the plan. The mercenaries left guarding the base would be the sacrificial lambs, while they quietly evacuated the base using the passageway. As long as they survived, they could get as many mercenaries as they wanted from their secret sponsor. The Rose militant mercenaries who were defending against the incoming attack did not know that they had been abandoned. They were still operating the cannons assiduously to defend against the Catonians and Thorns. The blasting sounds of cannons filled their ears. Smoke and flames engulfed their sight. They could not hear a word from one another. Everyone was fighting, as if they were the only reef there against the ocean wave. Fighting a lone battle. After more than 10 rocket rounds were fired at the scarred metal gate, it finally gave in and blew up. The gate was open. Charge. Kuden was overjoyed. The motorcade entered in a single file. Following which the Catonians, equipped with automatic rifles, swept through the entire base. The mercenaries from Rose Militant could not set up an effective counterattack the moment the enemies charged into the base. They were shot into sieves when they tried to escape from the cannon emplacements. Han Xiao drove Thorns in. He took out his 2 berserk eagles and acted independently. The Catonians gave him a glance but did not hold him back. Han Xiao's movement was as swift as could be, his black windbreaker flying like a cape. He was like a dark specter scouring the battlefield. Soon he finished searching the entire base. In the process, he encountered 2 mercenaries from Rose Militant, who he preemptively shot in the head. One of them was rather beautiful. She would have turned many heads if she wore a bikini and walked on the beach. Han Xiao secretly regretted his decision to shoot her in the head. After a round of searching, Han Xiao did not spot the leader of Rose Militant. His brows knitted as he knew the whole situation was not so simple. There must be a secret passageway. Wars were daily affairs in the Samar Desert. It would not be surprising if the Rose Militant kept a secret passageway for their evacuation. Han Xiao soon discovered their tracks. Luo and her gang had left in a hurry. Thus, they had left some footprints behind. He followed the trail of the footsteps and entered a hidden cellar beneath the ground. The cellar was dark and filled with a moist, humid smell. A secret underground river? Han Xiao ignited a fire pack before he threw it down. The depth was about 5 meters. He ensured that it was safe before he jumped down. Beneath the base was a rocky mountain, and the cellar was actually a path dug within it. Like the passageway in a regularly mine, the walls of the path were held up by wooden frames. It was completely dark at the front of the path, as there was not a single source of light. There were clear footprints in the soil. Han Xiao raised his hand to feel the rocky walls, and he felt a patch of moisture. He suspected that there might be a secret underground river nearby. The situation of the path ahead was uncertain. Han Xiao pondered for a moment. He then took out his spider detector and laid it on the floor. The mechanical spider stood at attention like a soldier awaiting orders as Han Xiao started controlling it with his tablet. "I will call you Spider Number 1. After coming up with an amazing name as usual, Han Xiao quickly controlled Spider Number 1 to move further into the path. The vision of its camera was shown on the tablet. Spider Number 1 was equipped with a night vision camera. After moving for a while, Spider Number 1 suddenly ran into a rocky wall. It had reached the end of the path. As the path was clear of danger, Han Xiao took out his torchlight and walked briskly to the end of the passageway. Unsurprisingly, he spotted a secret door on the ceiling. Heaps of sand fell as he opened the door. Han Xiao stuck his head out of the opening, and he looked out of the cellar. It was a slanted cave. Sunlight was shining in through the opening of the cave along the slope, and the ground was covered in tire tracks. Han Xiao swiftly moved out of the cave, and his view suddenly brightened. The place was a complex of weathered rocks. The silhouette of the base could be seen from a distance. A vehicle's tracks had been left in the desert, heading away from the base. The remaining members of Rose Militant escaped using the vehicle. I'd better chase them quickly. Han Xiao retrieved Spider number 1 and went back to the base hastily. He prepared to chase them using thorns. The Catonians had eradicated Rose Militant's presence within the base. They were now unloading all the supplies to take them away. They slowed down their movement and focused all their attention on Han Xiao as he walked out. They were looking at him warily. Han Xiao's heart sank. Kutan brought a bunch of mercenaries and surrounded thorns. Han Xiao touched his gun in secret before he walked over to them and said, "Move away." "Who are you?" Kutan looked Han Xiao up and down, thinking about something. "Not important. Please get away from my car." "Your car?" Kutan glanced at thorns before a wicked smile appeared on his face. He gave his men a signal, and they quietly surrounded Han Xiao, ready to draw out their guns anytime. "Are you sure this is your car?" Kutan stared at Han Xiao and chuckled. He was clearly threatening Han Xiao. If Han Xiao's answer was not to his liking, he would have his whole gang of men beat him up. Phew. Han Xiao attacked without saying a word. He swiftly dashed 3 meters forward, and his berserk eagles were already pointing at Kutan's forehead, like an unsheathed sword. His movement was as fast as that of a fox, and his gun moved rapidly like lightning. That was too fast. The surrounding mercenaries were shocked. They then hurriedly raised their guns and aimed at Han Xiao. Han Xiao's sudden spectre-like movement made them extremely nervous. Furthermore, their boss's head was right against Han Xiao's pistol, so they did not dare fire at him. They were in a deadlock. Although there was a gun to his forehead, Kutan was surprisingly calm and unafraid. He had always been living his life on edge. "If you want to threaten me to disarm my men, you can save yourself the effort." He smiled coldly. "You know who I am. Your master would not want his people to fight against each other," Han Xiao replied calmly. He seemed oblivious to all the guns pointing directly at him. Kutan's expression turned gloomy. He frowned and pondered for nearly 1 minute, the tension on the ground increasing all the while, before he suddenly waved his arms to ask his men to drop their guns down. He gave a half-hearted smile and said, "It seems like it is really your car." Han Xiao held his berserk eagle up and remained unmoved. Kutan moved sideways to open a path for Han Xiao. Only then did Han Xiao start moving. He brushed past Kutan before going up to the thorns and saying in a hostile manner, "Good try." He then stepped on the accelerator and drove away. The smile on Kutan's face disappeared as he watched the car vanish in the distance. He turned around and realized that his men were all watching him. "What are you guys looking at? Hurry up and carry the items away," he shouted snappily. Although he was eyeing thorns, he did not want to bear the possibility of infuriating his master. Kutan reckoned that Han Xiao was an assassin hired by his master, so he was on his side. Thus, after Han Xiao pointed this fact out, he could no longer provoke him. If he messed up his master's plan, he would suffer dire consequences. Furthermore, Han Xiao was an assassin that he did not know enough background information about. So, after some consideration, he decided to control his greed and made peace with Han Xiao. The vehicle tracks left behind on the vast desert by Luo and her gang were like creases on a piece of white paper. They were as conspicuous as could be. Han Xiao followed the tracks without stopping. His position was continuously shown on the radar coordinates in order for him remain on course in the boundless desert. He was now heading toward the outer edge of the Samar Desert. It was indicated on the weather calendar data that a sandstorm had just occurred in this place. The plain and unchanging sight of the desert was making Han Xiao feel mentally tired. After half an hour of pursuit, a roving jeep suddenly appeared in the distance. "I am finally catching up." Han Xiao's psyche was rejuvenated instantly. Just as Han Xiao spotted the jeep, the members of the Rose Militant on the jeep also caught sight of Han Xiao. "It's thorns!" Suli cried out. Luo's face tensed up before she anxiously surveyed the surrounding, and realized that the pursuing force consisted of only a single vehicle. She was immediately incensed. How dare you pursue us alone? Do you really think we are this easy to defeat? Make a U-turn. Thorns was firing at its maximum firepower. Grenades and missiles were chasing and bombing after Luo's vehicle. Luo was intimidated. Cough. Cough. Let's run until he finishes his ammunition. She was slightly embarrassed. The two vehicles were in a high-speed pursuit, as they drove past sand dune after sand dune, scorched sand marking the course of their chase. Raggedly dressed pilgrims were seen gruelingly trekking through the desert. The leader of the group, an elderly pilgrim, was panting intensively, and his clothes were drenched in his sweat. He unloaded a water bottle from the packhorse and gulped one sip with his trembling hand. But somehow, he could not relieve his exhaustion and thirst. The elderly pilgrim turned around and glanced at the group. Everyone else was in low spirits. He then thought back to the times when he was younger. There had once been tens of thousands of compatriots who escaped from the same conquered country and embarked on this journey together. However, after years of hardships, there were only 24 people left. Some people had died on the journey, and some had given up halfway through. This small group of people were the last pilgrims. At times, the elderly pilgrim could not help but become skeptical about the existence of Felonia. However, if he gave up, it would render his years of perseverance meaningless. An engine sound was heard from a distance. Han Xiao and Rose Militant's cars appeared in their view, and mounds of sands thrown into the air by the vehicles. The pilgrims were not at all shocked, as such a scene was commonplace on this desert. As soon as they confirmed that the violent vehicles were not moving toward them, they released their worry. They stood at their position and waited for the two vehicles to leave. At this point in time, a small-scale missile flew in the sky and landed on thin sand. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. The ground vibrated abruptly, and sand fell downwards at the position where the missile exploded. As more sand fell downward, a pitch-black hole appeared in front of everyone. The hole expanded continuously, like a gigantic mouth being opened. The appearance of the running sand implied that there was a huge, empty space beneath the. You discovered a hidden location, Felonia, 08. You received 1000 exploration EXP. Bounty Hunter, Rose Militant. Hidden requirement completed. Han Xiao was so surprised that he almost overturned his car. What the hell? I completed the mission by accident. Am I that lucky? But how can I use my luck on this kind place? This is such a waste. The sand hole was still expanding. Han Xiao reasoned that the sandstorm that had happened a few days ago must have changed the structure of the sand layers in this area. Following which, his explosions triggered a chain reaction that resulted in this opening. Although he was very curious about what Felonia was exactly, his hunt for Rose Militant was more important at this juncture. After he left the coordinates of this place on his radar, he continued to chase after Rose Militant. The two vehicles soon drove into the distance. The elderly pilgrim's hands were trembling relentlessly. With a look of exhilaration, he called out to his peers who were stunned behind him. This must be Felonia. We have to go there quickly. The pilgrims were enlivened. They rushed toward the hole in the ground anxiously. Felonia's treasures. Felonia's treasures. The elderly pilgrim could not stop mumbling to himself. Tears trailed down his cheeks, as he believed that he was finally getting rewarded for all those years of determination and perseverance. After a few kilometers of pursuit, Thorns eventually ran out of ammunition, an inevitability no matter how strong its firepower was. Yet Han Xiao sighed in relief. He was glad that this straining pursuit battle was finally coming to an end. This bunch of sissies should stop any minute now. If they don't even stop running and strike back, they must be really cowardly. This guy finally finished his rounds. Suli was the first person who spotted Thorn's abnormal situation. She was the creator of Thorns. Luo was immediately relieved. She then said ruthlessly, "Turn around." The two vehicles were 400 meters apart. Han Xiao already stopped his vehicle. When he saw the jeep turn around decisively, he gave a sly smile and started point firing with his sniper rifle. A distance of 400 meters allowed him 8 to 10 shots. It took him 4 spindle bullets to shatter the bulletproof window. The 5th shot flew directly at the driver. Luo, sitting on the front passenger seat, suddenly raised her hand and shielded the driver. The bullet, as if it had hit an invincible wall, generated a wave of reflective white light before it was squashed into a metal cake by the deflecting force and was left levitating in the air. An Esper with force field type ability. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes as he felt that the situation had become more difficult to handle. Espers had all kinds of abilities, but some of them would awaken with similar, or even the same abilities. Force field was a major type of ability for Espers. Other common types included molecular control, strengthened body, and transfiguration. The force field-related abilities included remote manipulation of objects, invincible walls, and invincible strikes. It was the natural counter to gunfighting abilities. As he finished his thought, Han Xiao quickly stuffed HAME bullets into his gun and fired again. Luo deflected the bullet again with her force field. However, as the bullet was being compressed, it released a light green poisonous gas. Everyone in the vehicle was instantly poisoned. They started feeling dizzy, their chests tightened, and their HP dropped continually. From the battle data, Han Xiao knew that Luo was the same level as him, level 30, so she had not mastered the skill to manipulate gases. Han Xiao then fired a high-explosive bullet, which ignited the interior of the Jeep. However, the fire was quickly put out by fire extinguishers. The vehicle was chiefly used for evacuation, so it was equipped with fire extinguishers to prevent fires from breaking out. Han Xiao had no choice but to discard his initial plan to force his enemy to abandon their vehicle. Yet, he showed no signs of being discouraged. He fired 2 HAME bullets again, and now, the Jeep was engulfed by concentrated green poisonous gas, as if the vehicle was consumed by a plague. After these few rounds of fire, the distance from the enemy was only 100 meters. Han Xiao put aside his sniper rifle and stomped hard on the accelerator. He was fearlessly trying to collide with the Jeep head-on. Suli's expression changed, and she anxiously instructed the driver, "Quickly dodge. The armored exterior on Thorns is extremely thick. We cannot best it." The driver quickly turned the steering wheel upon hearing the instruction and wanted to brush past Thorns. Upon seeing this, Han Xiao turned his vehicle in the same direction, but he was too slow. He only brushed past the rear of the Jeep. He wanted to ruin the enemy's Jeep by smashing into it. If he had succeeded, he could then have used Thorns to hit the enemy and run. However, Rose Militant reacted too quickly and dodged the attack. Luo just realized that even when Thorns ran out of ammunition, it was not a vehicle to be reckoned with easily. She had no choice but to suppress the anger in her heart. Never mind. Let's not be badgered by him. The Jeep turned around and drove for tens of meters before Luo realized that Thorns did not chase them. As she believed for a moment that Han Xiao had given up, she heaved a sigh of relief. She then gnashed his teeth in anger. "I will let you go for now. Your time will come once our backup is here." Just as she finished this thought, an invisible wave traveled from Thorns in a circular motion. Their Jeep suddenly lost all its power, and the vehicle skidded a few dozen meters due to the remaining momentum, before ground to a halt paralyzed. The people in the vehicle were all thrown out of their seats. In the back seat of Thorns, Han Xiao had started his EMP disruptor, meaning that Thorns had also lost its power. Han Xiao sighed. That was the last resort to prevent the enemy from running away, which he did not intend to use, but he realized that Luo did not have the guts to stay and battle it out. Thus, he had been forced to resort to such a mutually destructive method. Even if he attempted to fix Thorns, it would take him more than 10 minutes. Next, it would be human versus human. EMP wave. The car is wrecked. Luo was dumbfounded. After being repeatedly plotted against, she could no longer contain her rage. She walked out of Jeep and started the force field under her feet, which allowed her to move a few meters with a single step. She charged toward Han Xiao rapidly like an incoming missile, and the force field around her was rather erratic. "Are you so eager to die?" Before Luo even reached Han Xiao, her ravings thundered in Han Xiao's ears.